UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's 3 minutes past 10, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, whether you're watching on YouTube or your connected device, great to have your company. Thank you very much. Another grim February day, another grim day of news. I don't know how much more, because God forbid, no one's gone through all 3 million documents yet, have they, of the Jeffrey Epstein files? But pretty much every time they go through documents, they find another email from Peter Mandelson to Jeffrey Epstein, revealing, confidential secrets of our government. Whether or not the former, well, he's still a peer, Lord Mandelson, whether the former cabinet minister is going to end up facing a full police investigation, charges, or, frankly, not just for misconduct in public office, for insider dealing, insider trading, and let's be honest, treason. Treason seems to be not an unreasonable charge at this point. Whether or not we see more investigations into the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew, into what he knew when. I'd love to hear your thoughts on very important question, I think, today, which is, do you trust that there will be a proper investigation into both Lord Mandelson and ex-Prince Andrew's links with Jeffrey Epstein, given what we know so far? And I'm pretty sure there's a lot more to come out. Journalists are slow readers. Or do you fear there'll be an establishment cover-up? Because JK was just asking me, do you think, that these two men will go to prison? I don't think there's any allegations involving Sarah Ferguson other than terrible, poor judgment. Who takes their 19-year-old and 20-year-old daughters to go and have lunch with and take airline tickets from a bloke who's just got out of open prison for soliciting a 14-year-old for prostitution? The woman is sick. The woman is sick. Any mother that does that needs her head screwed on properly. Does that mean she committed a crime? I'm not sure there is any crime she's been alleged to have actually committed, other than the fact that she just got massively bad judgment and will basically take money from anyone, and I mean anyone. Prince Andrew, probably the same. Mandelson, though, this is looking very, very serious. We've got to Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, calling for a public inquiry. Yeah, well, we'll see. Let's just bounce that in to the long grass, shall we? But do you trust that there will actually be a proper investigation, that we will find everything out? These men are not going to testify before Congress. The Clintons have agreed to do that. These men are not going to go to America probably ever again. They won't risk it. But do you think there will be an establishment cover-up? Basically, it's sort of let's face it, very similar to the grooming gangs across the country here, where it just isn't in everyone's interest who's been in power over the years for everything to come out. Because if you think that's the reason why, that isn't the reason why we've had an investigation, a proper inquiry yet into the grooming gangs, then, you are living in a very naive world. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call, 03444 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost one, standard network rate message. We're also going to be discussing Keir Starmer's never-ending Brexit reset, junior doctors in England voting once again for the right to strike over the next 6 months, and also, is this the beginning of a start of lawsuits, not just in America, but here in the UK as well? A former trans, a girl who had her breast cut off at the behest of her doctors who encouraged her to basically transgender. She's won $2 million in a US court. $2 million. Numerous other cases starting in years, basically about how she was basically pressured and pushed into this and now horribly regrets it, as of course you would. Well, we'll be talking about all of that, loads more, and joining me for all the chat today is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Very good morning to you. I mean, genuinely, I wake up every morning like, what's the latest on these Epstein files? We waited a long time for them. I mean, long time. He was supposedly killed himself. I don't believe that happened. Quite a long time ago. And we're still talking about this man. We finally got not even all of the Epstein files released, but the ones that have been released, utterly damning for Andrew and Fergie, utterly damning in terms of just their money grubbing, every single, pretty much, other than I'm Prince Andrew, good evening. In that interview with Emily Maitlis on Newsnight, pretty much everything Andrew said was a proven lie in terms of his continued contact with Epstein. It wasn't just to say goodbye. The man was literally fawning with him, desperate to see him. So was Fergie, constantly for a long time after his conviction for soliciting a 14-year-old. The allegations against Mandelson, though, are looking very serious indeed. We are looking at June 2009. We are talking about, we're in the heart of the financial crisis at this point. Mandelson appears to have forwarded a memo from closest advisor to the Prime Minister, Nick Butler, the Prime Minister then being Gordon Brown, forwarded it to Epstein, suggesting the government should sell off assets to bail out Britain's banks. Mandelson captions it, interesting note that's gone to the PM. And then Epstein, who is a financier? He can make serious amounts of money on this. By the way, at the expense of the British people at this point. 2 months later in 2009, Mandelson appears to have forwarded another email, this time from another Brown advisor, Baroness Vadera, suggesting giving funds to struggling companies in exchange for a share of ownership after the financial crash. Again, would have been financially useful for Epstein. In April 2010, he appears to have sent Epstein a note about a meeting between the Chancellor, who then was Alistair Darling, and the US Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. And he sent details of the meeting between himself and Summers, including banking regulation. Again, some guy involved in banking, clearly beneficial. And absolutely crucially, a month later, in May 2010, he appears to have messaged Epstein confirming plans for a €500 billion bailout of the banks. And he also seemed to warn the paedophile of Brown's resignation before the news was made public. I mean, probably about 8 hours before it was made public, saying he'd finally got him to go. This was when Gordon Brown was failing his negotiations to form a Lib Dem Labour coalition after the 2010 election result. He was basically messaging him constantly with any information that could be of use to him. He then got his help to get a job which was supposedly going to pay him effectively $4 million a year. Nice work if you can get it. Took $75,000, which he doesn't recollect. And an interview with Katie Balls in the Times, some of which was carried out before he resigned from Labour, but some since. He seems to think he's the victim. What do you make of it all?
Well, I, for one, was shocked to find out that Peter Mandelson, of all people, wasn't entirely on the up and up. All those many decades of showing up inexplicably on various people's yachts, at some point later a healthy donation being made to the Labour Party, that this guy, out of all of the new Labour figures, is one we expected more of.
Yes.
And the fact that we didn't get it in relation to Epstein is absolutely shocking. I mean, I say that not to downplay the seriousness of what is here at all. I mean, just because it fits a pattern, shall we say, where Peter Mandelson is concerned, doesn't make it any less damning. What is being alleged here is kind of, talked in quite euphemistic terms of sharing financially sensitive information. If what is in black and white now is what we think it is, there's potential allegations of very serious insider trading here. The frequency with which he's in contact with not only a disgraced sex offender, but also a financier, as you say, someone who could readily profit off of the information that is being supplied to him, is absolutely staggering, and also naturally raises questions about the judgment of our current Prime Minister, given this is someone who burnt a fair amount of political capital in making ambassador to the US and sticking by him even originally when some of this heat started to turn up. So, we're talking about a police investigation now, let alone just someone having to resign in disgrace. And I think does it say a lot about Lord Mandelson we didn't already know? Probably not. Does it add to the pressure on a Keir Starmer government that doesn't seem to have been able to make any good decisions so far? Absolutely.
No, but that's the thing. There's no questions, especially in Morgan Sweeney, his chief of staff. But again, he's appointed by Keir Starmer. So if he's not going to take his advice, then don't appoint him.
Quite.
But again, as you say, we all knew. I mean, everyone knew after his first resignation, way back when under Tony Blair's first government, that he was a liar. We knew he was a liar because he'd lied about his mortgage. And it wasn't, getting a big mortgage, but it wasn't. It was actually a loan from Geoffrey Robertson. Probably lied to his mortgage company. He's been getting away with all his life. And you do think a lot of these men, what? Everyone said, we're talking a lot on the show yesterday. Everyone says he's so clever. I'm like, clever people don't get caught, surely. He keeps getting caught, and people still think this guy's a genius. This guy's a genius. But I mean, again, I've always found these things. OK, if you're doing this for millions or billions, it makes sense, 75k. But obviously there were other things. Obviously there was a promise of other things. I think that this may or may not be in some of the emails we're going to see. I think he is corrupt to his, to the top of his head. I really, really do. I'm sorry. I genuinely, I think the evidence is really clear. And all Lord Mandelson has been saying about all this is like he has no recollection. OK, well, you might not recollect any particular emails about basically, in a treasonous way as a government minister, supposedly serving allegiance to the Crown, to be giving away information. At one point, he tells Epstein to tell his banking mates at JP Morgan, put some pressure on, make some mild threats to the Chancellor, then Alistair Darling, to try and get your way on, was it bankers' bonuses or whatever it was, and it didn't work. Alistair Darling stuck to his guns. All credit to him. But I mean, that's an outrageous thing for a government minister to do. By the way, also outrageous, if you remember Philip Hammond, when he was Chancellor of this country, when he was basically working with the European Union to try and undermine our Brexit deal. I said that was treasonous then. I still think it is now. I really think we should be holding cabinet ministers to account. If you're not working for the good of Britain, then I'm sorry, you should be charged with a crime. Or don't do the job. Don't do the job. He'll think he's going to get away with it. A lot of the debate today has been about, should there be an Act of Parliament for him to lose his peerage? I don't think he should be a peer. He certainly shouldn't sit in the House of Lords. I don't think he should ever be made a peer. But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't really care whether he gets a nice table in a restaurant or not because he books in under Lord Mandelson or Peter Mandelson. I care not two hoots about this. But there is this argument about how on earth is it that we can get rid of MPs but we can't get rid of these peers from the House of Lords. So it's all a convention that, well, he won't sit in the House of Lords, but he could if he wanted to. Does any of that matter?
Not in the grand scheme of things. As you say, when we're talking about a police investigation, these aspects of the debate feel a little bit secondary. Also, I think it's just coursing that sort of dance after you get disgracing information like this out into the public realm, where suddenly it's the pressures on the Prime Minister not just to strip him of his Labour Party membership, but to take him out of the House of Lords, to do this, to do that. And now we're obviously talking about the fact that he almost certainly won't use the title and almost certainly won't sit in the House of Lords again, but even the fact that he is technically still a bearer of that title. I mean, this is going to strike people a lot as a kind of distinction without a difference, but naturally it's just all part of the process that the government is going to have to go through to sort of publicly atone for having made these mistakes, even if it doesn't make that much material impact on Mandelson's ability to operate and all the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly. But I think some of these quotes from this interview done with Katie Balls of the Times, and some of this was done before he actually left the Labour Party, but this is after basically all these revelations were coming out. It was like this is vandalism. It was like a 5:30 a.m. drive-by shooting. I was at the edge of something. Suddenly I was put at the centre of it as a result of historical emails of which I have no memory and no record. And apparently the emails also came as a surprise to Downing Street. They basically, when he was ambassador, and he and his husband were told to be out of that residence in a week with everything packed up and removed. It felt like being killed without actually dying. He says he described it as a life-changing crisis. And she says, I mean, I'm navigating the experience because I have really good friends who are helping me to do so, starting with Ronaldo, his partner, more than anyone else. But he talked about his relationship with Epstein and said, he was like dog muck. The smell won't go away. But talked about how he was, why he was so, he was very clever. And how he would basically, inveigle himself into his life. But I mean, this is absolute nonsense. I mean, this is abject nonsense. He wanted to hang around with Epstein because Epstein was rich, and we've got these photos of him, in the house, he's on Little St James Island, in the house in Paris, so the flat in Paris, and his wife.
I can't unsee those photos.
Yeah, I mean, it's just non-stop. He was basically on a freebie. Epstein just basically, sent everyone around on his private jet or on first-class tickets, and all these people loved it. A lot of these people, by the way, interestingly, wealthy enough to afford the stuff on their own. It will never amaze me how much really rich people try and get other rich people to give them freebies. Rich people are like the cheapest people on the planet. You can afford your own flights. Pay for your own flight to Epstein. And
it seems like
he's got no class.
Yeah, and the way in which the already quite rich seem very beguiled by the mega rich seems to be a big part of this.
And Tony Blair's
story.
one of those.
No, absolutely.
He and his wife, very rich. She was earning about $500,000 a year.
Yeah.
But he was like surrounded by all these people who are multimillionaires, and it's like, I want me some of this.
Exactly, and it's kind of started that trend for as soon as you have a Prime Minister leave power, leave Parliament, suddenly just trying to get to that kind of level, because those are the people that they've been hanging around. And that's another part of this story which will make people really recoil. It's a reminder of what utterly different lives these people lead. That we expect that of the kind of mega rich and the finances and so on, but when it's kind of politicians, people who might be standing for Parliament, MPs, people who are saying that they care about your cost of living concerns, meanwhile this is happening. It's a reminder of that gap between the public and politicians, and also for Peter Mandelson to play the victim. I mean, it does make you reach for the world's tiniest violin. Like, first of all, because all of these problems that you're facing are entirely of your own
Well,
making.
he said he's been unlucky, and some of that bad luck has been of his own making. All of it has. It's not unlucky. He's only unlucky because he got caught out lying each time.
No, and also it's just a spectacular failure of common sense, or a refusal. Maybe he didn't care.
Integrity.
If people also, even if we want to buy his cover story, which is that he was one of the many people who were fooled by this dazzling rich person,
Fooled by this convicted child rapist.
The fact that not only did he continue his relationship with Epstein after he was found guilty of soliciting prostitution from a minor, but also appeared to be advising him on how he could, dress up that conviction as something less as it would be, utterly explodes that. But even if we took his cover story as read, if you're constantly hanging around with, being flown around by, enjoying the hospitality of someone of that level of wealth, who has, shall we say, various financial and other interests, do you not think that would come with some kind of strings attached? Like, are you really that dumb, Peter Mandelson? I mean, I agree with you, he's not the great genius he was being made out to be.
But he is a very clever
But
man.
I dare say he's not as dumb as he's being...
And he knew perfectly well that, Epstein wanted this information from him. I mean, also, Peter, no offence, are you that great company that he would hang around with you for anything other than, say, with Andrew and Fergie? No one is hanging around with Andrew and Fergie for the scintillating conversation. I mean, believe me, having once had a phone call from Fergie, I've mentioned before, hello, this is Sarah. I mean, no, genuinely. I genuinely sit there going, can you get off the phone? I'm busy. I'm just making a cup of tea. But this is the thing. I think the net is closing in. Mm-hmm. But the question I'm asking: do you trust there'll be a proper investigation, or do you think there'll be an establishment cover-up? Because I think you and I, one thing we've agreed on lots of many topics over the years, and the ones we disagreed on. We're not conspiracy theorists. I've always been of the view it's incompetence, laziness, ego. It's very rarely conspiracy. But there absolutely, I think, has been... Look, there have been a lot of people who've known perfectly well. We know Jeffrey Epstein was a conspiracy. He only got charged with one, act against one 14-year-old when he was back in 2008. So, I mean, and he got the most ridiculously easy jail time, and he was basically out most of the time. I mean, that was a conspiracy within government and within police to actually, the Justice Department in America, to let him get off. There's definitely been a conspiracy there. Definitely been a conspiracy to keep quiet about Prince Andrew and his links with Epstein over the years. Of course, as we discussed with senior figures in royal protection and a former press secretary to the late Queen. Of course, the police would have passed this up the line, and of course senior officers would have known, and of course it would have been passed to senior staff in Buckingham Palace, and it was allowed to carry on. There's already been a cover-up. There's only reason to suspect there won't continue to be one.
No, I think that's an entirely fair point. I guess the question where Peter Mandelson is concerned is what incentive is there for the Labour Party or for the government to try and dampen this down in any way they possibly can, or to essentially just get the barnacle off the boat,
throw him off the bridge.
And so that's to see how that plays out will be interesting. Obviously, the extent to which he might implicate other people in the former new Labour government is the
line about Peter Mandelson is he's known where the bodies are buried for years.
Yeah. And therefore that could be something
he's not been called the Prince of Darkness for no reason at all.
I mean, that was his only real saleable skill, wasn't it, when they brought him back in, was that he knows how the world works, which is to say that he has a big contact book, but also knows where the bodies are buried, to lean on that metaphor once again. So, yes, but at the same time, the political pressure is such now that something has to be done. And also, if the police get involved, I mean, this becomes
But again, do we trust the police? There have been lots of times when you think, like, really, was that a proper investigation? Again, there's a lack of evidence. Well, if you don't look for it, I mean, again, if you can't find the guy who stole my handbag in June 2024, I'm not entirely sure I'm going to trust your ability. You've got his name and his address and his photo. I'm not sure of your ability to look into this, police. Sorry, not got much faith anymore. What about Bill and Hillary Clinton? They've agreed to testify to Congress over Epstein. They've always refused. Clearly he said, I've never even met the guy. I mean, that's a pretty categorical, I've never met this guy, done any dealings with him. Bill Clinton certainly did, flew on his planes. He said that was always for his charities, it was for other business. But there are big question marks, not even question marks. We know about Bill Clinton's many, many affairs. There are also numerous stories about his relations with women where there have been non-disclosure agreements and the like. There's some very questionable stuff. I mean, stuff which is kind of accepted as read as true, which I probably can't say on air for legal reasons. But I wouldn't have allowed him to hang around with my teenage daughter. Put it that way. Let's go that far. So there are a lot of question marks, but there are a lot of question marks about everybody involved in that world. Rich people, powerful people, all men. They all hung around together. They all knew each other. They all messaged each other. The question is, who was and who wasn't involved. But then these latest documents, court documents filed by Ghislaine Maxwell's, not that we should trust anything she says, but, she does know more than most people, by her lawyers, suggesting there are some 30 men who've basically been given, free pass. Then they've been given complete indemnity. Who are those men? Deals get done, especially if they're people who are on the Democrat or the Republican side. Everyone does a deal. I don't put that past anybody at the highest levels in government on any political party to do those deals. There's a lot of stuff that comes out, where it's it's in the interests of the country that this doesn't come out or that doesn't come out or that will implicate that. And I don't think it's like a high-level paedophiling. I just think a lot of men were implicated.
Yeah, no, I think that's entirely fair. And I suppose we've got to make a distinction here, because it does stretch credibility, to put it lightly, to suggest, as everyone, including Ghislaine Maxwell, are claiming, that essentially Jeffrey Epstein was just doing all of this entirely of his own, off his own back. No one else was implicated. No one knew. You could be hanging around with him as much as Prince Andrew was, and you wouldn't have even got a sniff of what it was that he was up to. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. Of course, it seems commonsensical that other high-profile people will have either got wind of it, been involved in it, who knows. But at the same time, there's also this rampant kind of guilt by association which can happen, where anyone who has ever been in his company is therefore suspect.
Exactly.
And if you look at the latest, releases of the Epstein files, in terms of the individuals that we're talking about, nothing here is proof of any further criminal wrongdoing than has previously been alleged, let alone proven. Yeah. And I think making that distinction is really important.
Absolutely.
Because one can... one could be very sceptical of these claims that it was just Epstein.
You could be mentioned in the files. You could have gone to the island. You could have been on the plane. You could have, but you still.
Bill Clinton was obviously not. But do we really think Bill Clinton was purely on those planes because he was raising money for Oxfam or whatever else that he was claiming to do? Maybe not. But at the same time, you can't damn them on the basis of here is a photo of them standing next to said person.
No, absolutely. I mean, again, exactly. I mean, I get asked for selfies from people, every now and then, and I always think, God, am I going to be one of those people that someone's going to turn out to be sort of a serial killer? They'll go, and there you are. I'm going, I won't even remember. I don't know. I was at a train station and someone said, I like your show, can I have a selfie? I don't know. And I often think about that when I see, you can have a photo with someone, or you're at an event and that person's in the group, that can easily happen. But yeah, I just after the cover-ups we've seen on so many other things, and the information that we've had in the public domain about Andrew for so long, and the question marks about Mandelson, I'm sorry, I just don't think I trust any investigation is really going to get to the bottom of it. And I think it's down to journalists, I think it's down to the public really now. It really is in terms of what we're willing to accept. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. There's lots of other stories we want to talk about. We will get to them, but I do want to hear your thoughts on this. It's dominating the news. 0344 499 1000. Do you trust there'll be a proper investigation, whether by the police or whoever? Do you fear an establishment cover-up when it comes to both Mandelson and indeed Epstein and his relation, and indeed Prince Andrew? Give us a call. As I said, I've given you the number 5 times. You know already. This is Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater's still with me. Let's get straight to your calls, though. 0344 499 1000. Do you trust there'll be a proper investigation? Tom Mandelson and Andrew, their links with Epstein, or do you think there'll be a high-level establishment cover-up? Give us a call. Martin has done just that. He's in London. Hello, Martin, what do you think?
Morning, Julia. How are you?
Very well, sir.
Yeah, I'm not so sure we ever will get a true, proper investigation into this, simply because of how far it probably goes up. I mean, this whole sordid, disgusting affair, all of this is because of, money and power, basically. Yeah. And people like Peter Mandelson, Sarah Ferguson, that leech, they're obsessed with money. They're attracted to big money the same way that a moth's attracted to a flame. And that's what this is.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. But you've missed one out, though. Money, power and sex. I mean, basically, the three most alluring things in the world. And a lot of these people just, massively attracted to all of them. But, I mean, as we were discussing with senior figures who worked, in the royal palaces, how far up do you think it went? I mean, in terms of the cover-up, because people got to be guilty of no wrongdoing themselves, but they just don't want to damage their institution, whether it's the government, whether it's the political party, whether it's the royal family, whatever it is. They don't want to establish the institution, and they allow things to be covered up. But that was the same reason why 14-year-old girls not trafficked to a big beautiful paradise island in the Caribbean by Jeffrey Epstein on his private jet, but taken by a minicab to a room above a kebab shop and to be gang raped by Asian grooming gangs. Same age girls, same thing was happening to them. It was just in very different different postcodes. But the reason why that was covered up was because it was all community cohesion and they didn't want to implicate, local councillors and things like that. So, I mean, it's the same thing.
It is. And, with this, particularly with Peter Mandelson, when you think of the contacts that he's got, from the world of politics, all of the people that he's met over the years. Obviously, I'm not accusing everybody. That'd be silly. But I'm still trying to get over some of the photographs of him in his pants. I mean, I don't want to sound horrible here, but if I was I can't think of any time in my life where I've been in a room with strange people in my pants. Not once. And yet there's photos of him in his pants, in his dressing gown. I mean, what the hell's going on with this?
I'm thinking, okay, staying in someone's apartment, but same as staying in someone's staying in a hotel. If the cleaning lady wants to housekeeping needs to come in, or someone's delivering something, room service, you put clothes on to basically to be respectful to them. The girl's in a bathrobe. Couldn't he put a bathrobe on as well?
I know. Honestly, it's just, that photograph, I suspect, is going to live in sort of legend, I guess.
Oh, we're all going to make sure that is the photograph of him. But remember, he's been unlucky, and he's the victim here, Martin. Thank you for that call. Kevin is in Dorset. Wants to have his say. Hello, Kevin.
Good morning, Julia.
Morning.
Got quite a bit to say, so shall I
go for it?
Okay, so in no particular order, we'll do Mandelson first. So selling secrets, which is fairly obvious to other countries. Number two, inside dealing. So we're looking at for his own gain and benefit of taking money.
Well, did he? We don't have evidence of that.
There's the payments that were talked about with one of your fellow colleagues.
I have
yesterday.
no recollection of that money.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, we know what's true. So acting for benefits for third parties, so giving secrets away so they benefit. Not acting for the taxpayer, the British people. Next one, acting actually as a spy, because by giving those secrets and other things to other countries, i.e. China and Russia, he is a spy.
I mentioned treason earlier. It is.
Oh, I'm coming to that one. That's punishment. Number 5, misspent taxpayers' money to do all of this for his gain, other people's gain, and spying. So, as far as I'm concerned, death penalty, treason.
Wow, I don't think have we still got the death penalty for treason? I don't think we do. But no, I genuinely don't think that treason is too big a word. You want to talk about Andrew as well?
I haven't finished with Mandelson yet. So next one, C in my section, is sex offences. So we're looking at that as well for the police to investigate. Then we've got. I have to be clear that there's no allegation of him being involved in any sex offences whatsoever. I need to make that very clear. I saw a document yesterday which has come through the internet, straight from the files, which states Mandelson's in a room watching when a tape measure is being used to measure ladies' genitals before they were taken into a set.
Right, I have not seen. I've not seen that document. I can't verify the document. So for legal reasons, I'm going to have to leave that. I'm afraid, but no doubt more coming in. His whole thing was he's paid literally the gay card. I said, look, I know nothing about any of this. I wasn't part of that part of that world. You know, that wasn't a side of things that I was aware of when I was friends with Epstein. So that's what he said to her. Again, you have to bear in mind, you know, legal restrictions. But I'm going to have to leave it there. I do apologise for that. We haven't got Andrew. I'm sure you'll call in again. I'm going to have to go to a break anyway. Genuinely, I did have to go to a break. 10:34 is the time, but we will look into that claim that may well have come out while I've been on air and I haven't seen it. But 10:34 is the time. Up next, we'll talk to Freddie Gray. He's from The Spectator. He's the deputy editor. He's also the US editor about, well, what's going on both back in the US and the UK and where he thinks it's all heading. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back. The home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to my next guest. Freddie Gray is deputy and US editor of The Spectator magazine and joins us now. Morning to you, Freddie.
Good morning, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. Well, probably doing a little bit better than Andrew, Fergie and Mandelson right now. But there is no doubt at all, while there's been so much focus in the last few years, it's been quite a long time now, 6 years since that Newsnight interview, the focus on Andrew and Fergie has been huge. There's a load of stuff in the Epstein files about them. But when it comes to the most serious allegations we've got, for which there appears to be assuming these documents are true, evidence, Lord Manderson is the man who's currently facing prospect of a police investigation and possibly ending up in the dock for some very serious allegations that he has passed government information, insider trading information, goodness knows what, to Epstein for Epstein's financial benefit. How serious do you think this is, and how much do you trust that there will be a proper police investigation?
I think it is very serious, and I think the demands for an investigation, particularly now Gordon Brown has weighed in, will only grow. And I think it's a real problem for Number 10 in lots of different ways. Partly it goes back to the massive error of judgment that is now clear that it was to make Peter Mandelson the ambassador in Washington.
Yeah.
And I remember so well at the time, there were a lot of people saying, well, hang on a second, what about the Epstein stuff? What about his links to China? What about all the various
I think we were all saying it.
We were all saying it. But other people were saying, well, look, we need someone who's good at sucking up to Trump. And in fairness to Mandelson, he did do that assiduously and very well. He's very good at sucking up to rich people, as these emails show all too well.
Yeah.
The trouble for Labour is that if anybody knows where all the bodies are buried at the top of the Labour Party, it's Peter Mandelson. And so if they're going to try and take him down, there's going to be a very, very vicious infight. And that will be very, very interesting for journalists to watch. It'll be very, very painful for people at the top of the Labour Party.
Yeah, and this is the thing. He's not been called the Prince of Darkness for years for no reason. He's not been able to inveigle his way back in twice having to resign over wrongdoing. Let's call it what it is, wrongdoing, lying, lying about who'd lent him money for his home and lying to anyone and everyone about it, and then lying over getting a passport for the Nduja brothers. I mean, he's just been up to his neck in it for years. He like Andrew, never met a dodgy billionaire he doesn't like. Let's be honest. But this is the thing. You mentioned Gordon Brown, and of course, Mandelson. She was pointed out by my show yesterday by Benedict Spence. Mandelson has been appointed by 43% of Labour prime ministers. The 3 of the 7 Labour prime ministers that have ever existed, he's been appointed by them. Of course, sacked by 2 of them, not by Gordon Brown. He basically tried to talk Gordon Brown into resigning and claims that he talked him into it some hours beforehand. He actually did fall on his sword after basically losing the 2010 election and being unable to form a coalition with the Lib Dems, and basically his departure was the price of any proper talks with the Lib Dems. But the interesting thing is that Gordon Brown last September, we now understand that he's now said that he'd already asked the Cabinet Office to look into what Mandelson had been revealing to Epstein. So he already had an inkling that a lot of this stuff does relate to the advisors to Gordon Brown sending stuff to Gordon Brown, CCing Mandelson in it. He was not just business secretary; he was just a very, very, very close aide apparently he considered himself to be deputy prime minister to Gordon Brown, and this information was being relayed sometimes within seconds to Jeffrey Epstein. This is an incredible breach of trust, if nothing else.
Well, it is, and I think everybody always knew that New Labour had a very sordid element. And that Peter Mandelson was at the heart of that sordid element, and that was the sort of collusion, coordination between New Labour and big banks, and so on. And the kind of Mandelson-Epstein friendship really crystallises that. And I mean, Gordon Brown, well, we could have a whole hour on whether Gordon Brown was a friend of the bankers or not. But I think the fact that New Labour is going to have a reckoning now. There's a lot of people in Labour who felt that they betrayed their values as a socialist party under Tony Blair, and then a bit more.
Well, they established they weren't a socialist party. That's why they were able to win power.
Well, exactly. And as Peter Mandelson said, they're intensely relaxed about the filthy rich, rather too intensely relaxed, it seems. So, yes, I think Labour is overdue a reckoning on its past. Yeah. And it's tried to sort of cover up this terrible reckoning for a long time. And I think this story may push that out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. In terms of, well, if you want a gun for me, then I've got this information on you. Do you really want to play? And I don't think you even need to say that when you're Peter Mandelson. Everyone knows, we're going to suddenly see a whole spate of stories about various people's affairs and the like. I mean, there's loads of stuff that, you know, you hear rumours at Westminster about all the time. He'll have the dirt on everybody. That's what he does. That's how he manipulated people. That's why he was called, you know, the Prince of Darkness. As what I mean, we know there are a lot of politicians who are fairly money grubbing. I'd say I wouldn't include Gordon Brown in that. I don't think it was a great Prime Minister, but I don't think money grubbing is one of his things. You know, he's gone back to a very, you know, I think, or same could argue Theresa May, actually. That's, you know, there are some, you know, David Cameron, Tony Blair, and you know, absolutely, give me money. Rishi Sunak doesn't really need it; he already had enough. But this is the thing: when you liken this, it's all been about, you know, Andrew till now, and that's about allegations that he actually, you know, the claim that he'd had sex with a girl who was 17 who was trafficked to him. This is Virginia Giuffre. A second woman has now said this. Some really unpleasant photographs. There's long been talk about this sort of very sort of, I'm going to be polite, loose lifestyle. But I think a lot of people, they're sort of more shocked by the Andrew stuff because that involves allegations of, you know, abuse of teenage girls. Which is very different from Mandelson appearing to basically, if these emails are genuine, to have just basically, you know, kept his rich mate happy, keeping on the payroll with him and on the promise with him by feeding him information that would make him, let's face it, millions. Talk about that 500 billion euro bailout. That would 2010. That would have made that advance information would have made Epstein and his mates millions and millions of pounds. So there's definitely, you know, call to question there. But which do you think is the more serious? Should we be more concerned about the allegations involving Andrew or the allegations involving Mandelson?
I think Andrew has, I mean, he's been sort of written off by his own family. So I think, I mean, while it's very lurid and sensational, I think everybody has pretty much established that Andrew is a priapic, an embarrassing figure for Britain and the royal family. So I would say the more immediate and dramatic scandal is about Peter Mandelson. I think also it's very interesting the Britishness here, the British angle, because the people who have really suffered or been exposed, I should say, rather than suffered by this scandal so far, mostly are Brits. And yet there are Americans that are caught up in this. Of course, Donald Trump, some people think he's got away with it slightly because his relationship with Epstein seems to have ended before Epstein was established as a sexual criminal. But Bill Clinton is about to testify before Congress now.
How soon will that happen? He and his wife, although Hillary says she's never even met Epstein, which I find bizarre given the New York power-rich collection of people. How soon could that be happening?
I don't think a date has been confirmed. It would be very interesting. They initially resisted it. They defied Comer, the man in charge of this congressional committee. But now they have come round to it. And what's interesting is his party didn't support him. And the theory for a long time was that the reason the Democrats didn't go after the Trump Epstein stuff was because they didn't want to embarrass Bill Clinton and other senior Democrats. Clinton made this bold stand against the congressional inquiry. But all the Democrats, and the Democrats even on the committee, voted against him because they're thinking, we're quite happy to throw Clinton to the wolves if it means hurting Trump too. Yeah. So the fact that the Democrats are now kind of turning on one of their own, I mean, the fact that a president, I don't think a president has ever testified before a congressional inquiry like this before. That is a major, major scandal. But what I find interesting is that the sort of tabloid sense of shame that you see with Andrew and you see with Mandelson, it doesn't exist in the same way in America. I'm not saying Americans are...
Well, Bill Clinton has denied all wrongdoing, and we must stress that. Well, as Donald Trump says he's exonerated, Elon Musk, they're exonerated by all of these documents.
Indeed, but I mean, there are embarrassing photographs of Clinton in sort of, you know, jacuzzis with young women. I mean, that's come out. So, you know, he can deny all wrongdoing, but the Epstein muck sticks to people. And it is just a very mucky, sordid story about money, as you were saying earlier, money, power and sex.
What do you make of, I mean, the documents, again, just before this latest tranche was released, you know, in America, there's Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers putting together a court submission, basically saying, you know, there are about 30 men who've basically been given indemnity and have not been prosecuted. And it's quite bizarre. I mean, my God, she deserves to be behind bars, bang to rights. But it's quite bizarre that the only person who's been jailed over this and prosecuted has actually been a woman. And who are these men?
Well, exactly. And I think that is the scandal that will keep being plugged at. And until we know the answer, I think the Epstein story is just going to go on and on and on. And a lot of people who are involved in it, I've interviewed Alan Dershowitz, who's, he's mentioned he was Epstein's lawyer. He's mentioned a lot in the files.
Again, always denied wrongdoing. Yep.
Always denied wrongdoing, but he's always said release all the files. And I think a lot of people who are involved in this have come to the conclusion it's better just release everything, and rather than this endless drip, drip, drip of different tranches of files being leaked, people just scrambling around. I mean, it's a very odd situation, isn't it, now that evidence is just sort of dumped and the public passes its way through them. And because there's millions of people doing it, lots of different scandals erupt suddenly. And it's a sort of very hard to decide what's true. Then, of course, you've got fake documents floating around.
Yep.
There's a very bizarre way of understanding what happened or what was true. And some people, the real conspiracy theorists, think this is part of the conspiracy. It's to bamboozle the public with information so that we can't really see who those people who are close to Epstein, who are involved in his various financial activities, those people are.
I mean, I think it was very bizarre when Donald Trump campaigned on he would release the Epstein files and then he didn't and had to be basically bullied into it by his own party. That, again, got question marks about that. It's all, I mean, as you say, the plot is thickening rather than actually more coming out. Freddie Gray from The Spectator, thank you so much. Tom Slater, listening to all of that, your response?
I think Freddie makes a really interesting point about how do we essentially, in the social media age, have a scandal like this play out in a way that actually is just and makes sense. Because when you have kind of troves of information just laid out there, obviously transparency and getting all of the truth out there sounds like a really good thing. But it does create a bit of an atmosphere for feeding frenzy, in which is very easy for entirely untrue information to kind of rise to prominence, or for things to be misinterpreted willfully in order to bring down certain individuals.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, certainly some of the things that previous caller mentioned, again, I can't find evidence for that allegation, which is why I want to, have to be careful, because we just don't know what is real and what is not real. And again, we have no recollections. It's terrible having a bad memory, being mates with a paedophile billionaire.
Who among us hasn't forgotten why 75,000?
Exactly. I mean, honestly, that happens to me most years. I can never remember who've given it to me. 10:48 is the time. Up next, we are going to be talking about, things that are closer to home to most of our lives. And that is, will there or won't there be more resident, it used to be junior doctor strikes? And will that really make a difference? Because the last couple didn't really have a big effect, other than on making us think less highly of doctors. We're going to talk to Roy Lilly about all of that. This is Talk.
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:50 is the time. Let's talk right now about our health service. Roy Lilly is former NHS Trust Chairman and joins us. Morning to you, Roy.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. So another vote yesterday by the BMA, the resident doctors, we used to call them junior doctors, and they basically agreed that they've basically got the right to strike again over the next 6 months if talks with the government doesn't go well. I heard one representative of the BMA committee today say, look, they don't plan to strike. They just want to have it, as a negotiating tool. How likely do you think it is that there will actually be a strike?
Well, I am quietly optimistic, I must say. There have been talks going on between the DH and the BMA quietly for some time. I mean, they're not easy because it all turns really on the money, and the government is still taking the position there isn't any. But they're still talking, and that's important. You can't have a deal if you're not talking, so they're still talking. I understand why the doctors want this sort of threat of strike in the bag. It's to keep streeting feet to the fire.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple of things really worth pointing out here. First of all, the responses to the call for strike action of the BMA are starting to taper off. Not as many doctors voted this time, although the majority who did voted for strike action. So there's a bit of a sort of curve in the graph going down. I think that's quite important. Secondly, there's a change in the law that comes around just after Valentine's Day on the 15th of February this year. There's new employment law. So had the doctors balloted for strike action after the 15th of February, they could have got a mandate for a whole year.
Oh, right.
It was changed. So, I mean, they're cute enough to know that. So, they've gone for the 6 months thing. They can always renew it. You could end up with 18 months of strike action. But
start all over
I'm
again.
quietly optimistic. I can put no evidence on the table, but
they're trying to make this happen. I mean, the support among the doctors has gone down, and we've seen this again and again with the last two sets of strikes. Even though we're looking at 5 days, starting at 7 a.m. one day, and in crucial times, even just before the Christmas period, it actually didn't impact that much in the big scheme of things, not like it used to do a year or two ago. People carrying on working, but there's also a lot of fallback in public support for the doctors over this, isn't there? A lot of people are struggling, a lot of people doing bad. They're going, you know what, as public sector workers, you've done better than most in the round of 2024 when Labour got in. You got your big pay rise at 26%, or was it 29? I lose track, over a couple of years, and it wasn't over 1 year. But you know what? We're all in the boat. We're sinking right now. You're not a special case, and we're no longer supporting you.
Yeah, I agree. And there's two things to say about that. Firstly, I don't think the doctors care about public opinion. They care about can they get the votes.
I think the BMA are very different. The representatives, there's a lot of talk, but they're very hard left. They're very
they were taken over. They were taken over by a group called Doctors' Votes, and they did a kind of, as Momentum took over the Labour Party, Doctors' Votes took over the BMA, and they manage they chair all of the main committees except the Finance Committee. So yes, you are right. We're dealing with a very different organisation. As far as the NHS is concerned, well, on the face of it, yes, they're getting good. I never thought I'd hear myself say this. They're getting good at managing strikes. Okay, and good luck to that. The numbers are slightly misleading, although they're cracking a hell of a lot of people through the system while the strikes are on. They're actually, the numbers that we get, the 7.5 million people on the waiting list, comprises of people who are waiting for a diagnostic or are waiting for a day case procedure. And you can get the day case, the simple day cases through, and you can get the diagnostics through because they don't need the doctors to do the scans and imaging and all that.
So it can carry on.
The numbers look good, but if you're older and you've got multi-morbidity, as we call it, more than one thing wrong with you and something tricky, you'll be parked.
That's interesting. I've certainly had elderly relatives who've certainly had appointments cancelled. Again, moved by 6 months, which is not even just like moved to the next week. It's really interesting actually. In this week we've seen this this revelation. I think it was the Conservatives who put it out that basically hospital trusts are being paid $3 million a month or something to basically send out letters to their people on the waiting list to say, hello, do you still need to have your treatment? Are you still waiting for it? Or reply, you're dead. And if you don't reply by a certain time, we'll take you off the list. Now, a lot of people aren't very good at answering their post, or they've moved house, or the like. A lot of people wait a very long time. One of the main reasons people don't turn up for appointments is actually the appointment was so far ahead. You know, they don't keep. A lot of us. I'm someone who I've got stuff in the diary in a year's time. Most people don't live like that. But is this just a cunning little wheeze to cut those waiting lists to make them good, or is this a sensible admin project?
Yeah, it's sensible. I mean, we always used to validate waiting lists, as we call it, but not as often as they're being done now. We might do it every 6 months because you'd allow the system really to validate itself. If people don't turn up or respond to a letter, you know, park. But now, of course, and doing it, as you said, a lot of people are not very good at letters and all the rest of it. So validating waiting lists with the accuracy it's being done now is a very, very work-consuming, people-consuming job. It's phone calls. It's actually talking to people. That's why the government put more money in, because they're hiring agency workers to do this job and to figure out whether or not people do want treatment. So it's partly a bit of a wheeze, really, to bring the numbers down. And if you look at the last set of numbers that they published, it was all mainly through validation. It wasn't. It
wasn't actually getting more done. Well, I mean, what is this issue in terms of getting operating theatres to work? And we've got the same thing with courts. You know, we've got a backlog of people going to court, but you know, about a third of all courts aren't open every day. Actually, you know, putting people through the criminal justice system. And the same in theatres. We've got, you know, huge number of NHS surgeons not operating most of the time. Lots of theatres not. What's going on? Is this failure of management? Is this just a failure of bureaucracy? Because certainly in my experience, a lot of the issues when it comes to these things is a failure of bureaucro's someone's paperwork doesn't turn up. I don't think someone turns up to the wrong place, etc.
I don't think it's bureaucracy. I mean, getting the waiting list getting the operating list on each day full is, you know, that's the priority. Everybody's focusing on that. Where it tips out are where you've got hospitals that don't have a difference between what's called a hot and a cold site. A hot site is where they operate on people who have emergencies, and a cold site is waiting list stuff. Some of the older hospitals just don't have the facilities to divide up the hot and cold facility. So you come in, an orthopedic surgeon may come in one morning, 8 o'clock, you know, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to do a 6-people list, hips and what have you. And then suddenly there's an accident on the end, whatever it is nearby, and you go full of people who need emergency surgery. It doesn't have to be orthopedics, it's just operating theatres. So there's that. I mean, there's stuff, this time of year, people go sick, you know, they call in sick late and you can't get another scrub nurse in, or another operating theatre nurse, which is a skill in itself. So, I mean, there's a whole complexity of this. I mean, where I have seen stuff that, I mean, on the brighter side, they're now, where you can do it, you can get 2 operating theatres running side by side, and you get 1 consultant operating in the 2 operating theatres with the registrars doing the stitching up and the bits and pieces.
You're using their skills. We also know things like waiting lists. There's cunning ways of moving them. An elderly relative of mine who needs a hip operation was told on the NHS it's a 9-month wait to get the gap. You have to have physio. You have to have physio for 6 weeks, even though that patient was told you definitely don't need physio by their doctor, that won't work. But then you'd have to wait the 9 months for the physio, and then after that you can then go on the waiting list. It's just a 9-month delay to the waiting list. That's all that is.
Hospital managers are very clever at doing this kind of thing when there's political pressure on
absolutely
them.
Roy
there's
Lilly,
political pressure.
Political pressure and a lack of money. But again, I'm sorry, I still think a lot of it comes down to poor management. Roy Lilly, former NHS Trust Chair, thank you as always for joining us. Lots more to come, more from Tom Slater, more from top guests throughout the show. We're going to be talking more about Epstein and Andrew and Mandelson. Do you trust, crucially, there'll be a proper investigation into their links with Jeffrey Epstein, or do you fear an establishment cover-up? Get in touch. Want to hear you have your say.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you so much for joining us. If you missed the first hour, rip-roaring first hour, I'd like to say, with my top guest, editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater, and plenty more top guests talking about the biggest story of the day. No doubt at all, it is Epstein and the latest Epstein files that have come out and the implications there for... I mean, who knows how many more people are going to be implicated, but certainly when it comes to the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew and indeed Peter Mandelson, who may or may not keep his lordship, we are looking at some very serious allegations. We're going to be discussing whether the police are actually going to bring charges against Peter Mandelson, who he repeatedly leaked confidential documents to Epstein, assuming these documents are genuine and assuming that somehow Peter Mandelson starts recollecting money in his accounts and emails that were sent. Sarah Ferguson's charity to close after these Epstein revelations. Again, does anyone know that she was involved in these charities? I thought that she spent the whole time having her toes sucked and travelling around to, Kazakhstan with billionaires. Bill and Hillary Clinton agreeing finally to testify before Congress over the Epstein links that they've been alleged to have. She said she never even met Jeffrey Epstein. Certainly there have been some big question marks over Bill Clinton, his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But, they say it's going to set a precedent for other people. But it doesn't. People can still refuse to testify. And certainly Andrew and Peter Mandelson can refuse to testify, not being American citizens and simply not entering America. It doesn't look like either man will be able to go there again. They won't be arrested over it. Plus, we're also going to be talking about something else, and that is rules in Scotland over whether or not trans male prisoners, so men who nearly always have been convicted of a sex crime against women, and then somehow, like Isla Bryson, decide during the process of them being tried that actually they think they're a woman, can they be placed in women's prisons? Well, that's being challenged in court today on the basis of that Supreme Court ruling last April, which you would have thought would have made things very clear. But apparently an awful lot of people in both the Westminster and the Scottish Government simply can't read very well. We're also going to be talking about the absolutely tragic, the girl in America who's now on $2 million in court suing the surgeons who removed her breasts after basically, she says, being convinced by them that she needed to have what's called top surgery because she believed herself to be a trans-identified, she was a trans boy. Absolutely harrowing. I think it's the start of a hell of a lot of cases, not just in America, but here in Britain. And as I said to someone I know who worked at the Tavistock in London, you want to get yourself out of there because that is not somewhere you're going to want on your CV in years to come because they are going to be sued the backside off, and I hope so, for what they've done to children. But we'll talk about that with the brilliant Helen Joyce a little later in the show. As I said, joining me today is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. And the question we're putting to our audience today, Tom, basically is, do you trust there'll be a proper investigation into Lord Mandelson and Andrew's links with Jeffrey Epstein? Or do you fear an establishment cover-up? Because I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I know you're not. But I simply don't trust. There's a load of this information will have been known at high levels by police, by, say, royal staff, by people in government. I just don't believe that they're going to allow everything to come out because I have a funny feeling that both men will try and point the finger at an awful lot of people. Certainly for Lord Mandelson, you don't get called the Prince of Darkness for that many years. You don't get to do two comebacks and three resignations down to government. You don't get appointed by three of the last, Labour prime ministers unless you know where the bodies are buried. So will there be an establishment cover-up? And that, I don't think it has to be a conspiracy. It's already been an establishment cover-up of the grooming gangs. Different postcodes, a mini cab instead of a private jet, a room above a kebab shop where the girls are being raped as opposed to a private island or a multi-million-pound mansion in New York. But nevertheless, there's been an establishment cover-up. A lot of people knew and a lot of people tried to pretend they didn't know. I want to know your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Tom, do you think there will be a cover-up?
We shall see. It was certainly within the interests of the Labour Party to keep this under wraps for so long. I mean, I think will go down not just as a kind of error in judgment, but an act of supreme arrogance to reappoint Peter Mandelson, given all the things that were already known. Exactly, by Keir Starmer.
And we were all raising it at the time. We talked about it on air, here. Yeah.
And it was one of those things where, first of all, there were the things that we did know about, the number of times he ended up being sacked because of various different flavours of impropriety, but it was also because of the fact that when you're dealing with someone like Mandelson, you kind of suspect there will be more things in the closet which will come out. I didn't mean that as a homophobic joke, but it's come out there anyway. But nevertheless, the point being that it's quite clear that he was an unsavoury character. We already knew that he had this association with Jeffrey Epstein anyway. We didn't know the extent of it. We also didn't know the extent to which he had misremembered, to put it one way, or flat out lied about their association and how long it had gone on, even after it had become clear that Epstein was a convicted sex offender. So on Labour's side, of course, there is enormous incentive for them to cover this up because of the fact that Peter Mandelson has been around for a very long time. He will have dirt on many people. Do they want to get into some kind of vicious war of words with him? Probably not. But on the flip side of that, if this gets to the point of a criminal investigation, which of course the powers that be in the government can try to influence to a certain degree, that becomes a lot more difficult. But it does become more difficult for them to exercise that level of control over the flow of information once it reaches that particular point.
Well, I don't think there's a statute of limitations on these particular allegations that we think. I mean, again, he appears, if these, again, he has no recollection of anything, but it appears he's got. As I was saying,
and I believe him.
I for one, believe the man who's a proven liar that he absolutely has no recollection. And we'll go into Katie Balls, the Times journalist, and her interview with him, which is just extraordinary as well. I mean, just he is the victim. There's one victim in all of this, and one person who's been unlucky. It wasn't the girls who were trafficked and repeatedly raped by Epstein. No. It was Peter Mandelson. And of course, he's played his gay card already. I knew nothing. I'm gay. I knew nothing. Yeah. I mean, again, Ghislaine was a woman. She knew nothing. You know, she's behind bars right now.
There's a lot of people who seem to know nothing.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people who are like really, really clever people who know everything going on, but somehow just don't notice there's like a load of 14-year-old girls in someone's apartment. I mean, sorry, I'm embarrassed for these people. But the allegations that specifically on the front page of today about Peter Mandelson, again and again and again, basically he was at the heart of Gordon Brown's government. During the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, 2010, and in particular, there are 4 emails that he was CC'd in on by high-level staff to Gordon Brown, the then Prime Minister, about things like there's going to be a big bailout, a €500 billion bailout by the banks. There's this meeting about bankers' bonuses, or whether we're going to be selling off some government bonds or whatever it is, selling off assets to bail out the banks. All this stuff. He was passing this stuff on. It would appear, no recollection, it would appear within seconds or minutes of him receiving these. These were memos that were sent between 4 people. And he's the only one there's any evidence had any links to Jeffrey Epstein, and one of those 4 people is sending this information. So unless he was hacked by someone who was extraordinarily good at hacking at that time on people's Blackberries, this is looking very bad for him. We know the police are investigating. There's now, by the way, scrutiny of David Lammy. This is going to be fun. Deputy Prime Minister, your favourite and mine. Both David Lammy and Pat McFadden, the Work and Pensions Secretary, they were both ministers in the Business Department while Mandelson was Business Secretary, and they could both also face questions as part of the investigation into Lord Mandelson, ordered by their boss, Sir Keir Starmer. Again, if there were these leaks of this confidential government information to Jeffrey Epstein, then Sir Chris Wormald, the Cabinet Secretary, has been asked to look at all available information about Lord Mandelson's contact with the convicted paedophile while in government. Now, there'll be emails. They should have kept all these emails. I mean, this is the time, I think, when people thought, what you wrote on your BlackBerry was completely confidential, just you didn't realise that a lot of this stuff's been kept. But a lot of this time, again, this stuff's being forwarded on government emails, for goodness sake. This is going to just spread, spread its tentacles. And this is what we were talking about earlier with Freddie Gray from The Spectator. The thing about these sort of investigations is they start with 1 or 2 high-profile people, and then there are other people who are implicated who may or may not have been aware of things and did or said nothing. And again, this is where I liken it to the grooming gangs. In the UK, you didn't actually go and, grab a girl from outside school and take her somewhere or rape her yourself, but you knew it was happening. You knew when she returned covered in blood and drugged out of her head, and when you took her to hospital because she needed an abortion, what was going on, and you didn't do anything to stop it. You're into that territory, aren't you?
No, absolutely. There is a kind of process that you go through. There's the original scandal of clear-cut, outrageous criminal wrongdoing, and then there's the discussion about who knew what when. And the difficulty for this Labour government is that even when it came in, it was trying to present itself as a new broom, trying to present itself as kind of pious and immune to corruption and immune to infighting and immune to the sort of sleaze that we saw at the tail end of the Tory government, but kind of characterises any government, not to be too cynical about it.
The grown-ups are in charge.
The grown-ups are back in charge, and they are essentially, morally superior. That was the way that this came through, which was always hilarious to anyone who was older than 25, 30 years old, because people remember New Labour, people remember the sleaze which defined their time in office, which Peter Mandelson was a very key and central part of. The fact that Mandelson then gets appointed to be the ambassador in Washington again raised a lot of eyebrows, because people thought surely this is going to blow up in the face eventually, because Peter Mandelson, the one thing we can definitely say about Peter Mandelson, it always ends up losing his job and getting another one, although the final part of that might not be true this time. It's this is the problem for Labour, not least because, not only, as you say, because the likelihood that the story will spread, but also because they came into office trying to insist, even in the face of very recent history, that they were cleaner than clean, whiter than white. It's going to look even more damning for them, I think.
That's the thing, they're hoist by their own petard, aren't they? They always claim it. But it's fascinating. Katie Balls from The Times done an interview with Jeffrey Epstein. No, not with him, he's dead. With
got the Ouija board out.
Exactly. Is that a no? With Peter Mandelson. And most of it was conducted last week before the latest charge of revelations about him losing his job, but then she's had some comments from him since, and he said that Epstein's like dog muck, the smell won't go away. But it's interesting, he's talking about when he got basically told that he was going to be out of the job, and got a call on a Thursday morning, basically told that the Prime Minister had no confidence in him because of the emails to Jeffrey Epstein. And he says, this is Mandelson, it was like a 5:30 a.m. drive-by shooting. I was at the edge of something. Suddenly I was put at the centre of it as a result of historical emails of which I have no memory and no record. And he said he had to be out of that residence in a week with everything packed up and removed. I mean, my heart bleeds for him. It felt like being killed without actually dying. He says it was a life-changing crisis. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary. He said his decision to basically leave the Labour Party, he said he wanted to prevent further embarrassment.
So noble of him.
Labour says that disciplinary action was already underway, but he says that it wasn't easy, but he felt better for it as he needed a reset. I mean, this is genuinely...
On the verge of crying here, Julia.
I know, get that little tiny violin out, everybody. I mean, it was just extraordinary. And he talked about Ronaldo, his boyfriend, now husband, that taking that $10,000 a bursary for his osteopathy course. Mandelson was already a very rich man by this point. I mean,
he'd had 10 grand knocking around.
He'd had 10 grand. In retrospect, it was clearly a lapse in our collective judgment for Ronaldo to accept this offer. At the time, it was not a consequential decision. I mean, it's just extraordinary. But I mean, the idea that giving Ronaldo an osteopath bursary is going to sway mine or anyone else's views about banking policy is risible. He has no recollection or records of receiving that $75,000, and I think I would remember such a large sum. He says he has no recollection of that underpants photo. He says he has no idea what I'm doing in this photograph or who the woman was. It looks as though she came in and showed me something on an iPad. Yeah, it does, mate.
How can anyone buy this, though?
I mean, it's genuinely... But he thinks he gets away with it. But this is the thing, he says... It's difficult. He says Epstein, you now know, he says, is not the same figure as people thought they knew when he was alive. He says it's difficult for people to make that distinction because in most people's minds there's one Epstein, one flow of information. They didn't know him, but like everyone else, I learnt the truth about him after his death, which is in 2019, not in the early noughties. In the early noughties, in 2004, he was convicted of soliciting a 14-year-old girl for prostitution, which apparently he told Epstein was a complete fit-up. Because you know the way people get fitted up for that sort of thing all the time, don't they? He says of Epstein, he was a master manipulator. I can see that now. But the point is that his victims certainly did know what he was doing. I mean, None of this rings true at all. He's one of those very clever people who thinks he can get away with everything. He says he's been unlucky, and some of that bad luck has been his own making. He's not been unlucky. He has deliberately done things repeatedly and had a relationship with someone, continued that relationship, gave him information, it would appear, with full knowledge, and he's been unlucky to be found out again.
Does he really expect us to believe that $75,000 can just appear in his account and he would have no recollection of that whatsoever? Does he really expect us to believe that when £10,000 was sent to his partner, now husband, supposedly to take an osteopathy course, that this was part of some wonderful charitable bursary scheme that Epstein had set up, rather than it just being a kind of straightforward, here's some cash because I know you.
What amazes me is how little the sums are, because he did apparently, Epstein later on was helping him, according to these emails, to get a job which was $1 million base salary as an advisor to a bank, but you get another $3 million. So he was going to earn $4 million a year. Obviously, he was able to, go and stay at his nice pads and things. But I mean, Mandelson was on like 180 grand as a European commissioner. He was buying properties that are worth a fortune. He borrowed money from Jeffrey Robinson. He's like Prince Andrew. There's always been a lifestyle that his income has never quite really explained. He must have had some very good investments at some point, is all I can say. But he obviously, like a lot of rich people we were discussing earlier, seems to just live on freebies from other very much richer people. Like the Blairs, that you can't afford your own villa on holiday, you have to go and stay at someone else's villa. And it just, it doesn't make sense to me. The sums aren't big enough. I think that would be a justification. But it looks like there must have been, I would read, a promise of something in the future. Or
it just speaks to a certain level of entanglement, which could be compromising. So if there's not only these, tens of thousands of pounds moving around, which actually say in the grand scheme of things it's not a lot of money to Peter Mandelson.
It's not normal people, but
it's not a lot of money to Peter Mandelson, let alone to Jeffrey Epstein. But also the fact that he's being flown around, the fact that he's being put up on his island or wherever else. All of this speaks to a level of entanglement, and also clearly other benefits that were being extracted, like being put forward for certain positions and whatnot, which could potentially be compromising, to put it very lightly. So even when we're not talking about enormous sums of money, it clearly raises huge questions about his judgment, who was getting what out of the relationship and so on and so forth.
It's not even judgment, is it? I mean, if you're a government minister and you're getting private confidential memos and you'll forward them, I mean, in fact, you forward them to your wife. Sorry, Suella Braverman had to resign because of forwarding something to a Tory MP.
To get some notes on
it again, but she wasn't allowed to do that, so she shouldn't have done it. But, I mean, is that the biggest scheme of things a crime compared to you're forwarding stuff to an American business multi-billionaire banker financier who's going to make money out of it? Why did he want to know? Why would you tell Epstein about this? Why would you do that unless you were trying to give them information in advance that would help them? That's knowing. I'm sorry, if those documents are real, I don't see how charges won't be brought.
No, I agree. And I think that's particularly the kind of insider trading aspect to this. As I said earlier,
I think treason. I think if you're a government minister, you're literally a minister of the Crown. It's not Gordon Brown's government or Keir Starmer's government. It is the monarch's government. It's his HM government. If you are acting against the government, so you're basically encouraging foreign bankers to make money out of the taxpayer-funded British government, I think that's acting against your own country. I think we call that treason. I think that's what it is. I really do. Do you think he'll ever face prosecution? Do you think he'll ever face any time behind bars?
Well, this is one of the uncomfortable truths about the criminal justice system, particularly where political figures is concerned. Of course, politics comes into it. For a very long time, I imagine that partly because we didn't know all the details here, but also because of the fact that people in high positions tend to be better looked after for all sorts of reasons. Police forces, CPS can come under a level of political pressure, even if it's not direct and kind of command and control. I just wonder whether, because of all the information that's out there, because there's so much public outcry, because he looks so bang to rights on what he is alleged to have done, that the political pressure suddenly shifts in the other way. That you've got institutions like the police or the CPS or whatnot who do not want to look as if they are going easy on someone purely because they're a big figure in public life. So we'll wait to see what happens. But he stands so exposed now. And I don't just mean him and his wife fronts. It's like as politically, economically and so on.
He likes a tighty-whitey.
He does.
Definitely likes
Seems to have spent most of the 2010s in various Y-fronts and
yeah,
various
exactly.
islands.
What do you care, if at all, about whether or not he keeps his peerage or not? Because he said he's not going to return to the House of Lords, but he's technically allowed to. I don't know why he was ever made a peer in the first place. What was about, so he could serve, I think, in Mandelson's government, or whatever role he came back in. I lose track.
Yeah.
He's been around the whole of my adult life. Let's talk about whether there should be an Act of Parliament. The government is saying, look, this is all a bit difficult. Other parties are saying, no, we can pass an Act of Parliament in a day. I personally would rather they spend their time doing more useful things. There are plenty of people who've sat in the House of Lords who've actually got criminal convictions.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't got a criminal conviction. He may or may not get one, but he hasn't got one right now. Is that a priority?
I don't think so. I think it will continue to be, because it's the one thing that the government can do more immediately, is to start to move to legislate to strip him of his peerage. So therefore that will become the focus of the kind of SW1 horse and pony show. But that's not really the big issue, is it, in the grand scheme of things?
It's the appearance of doing something without actually doing anything.
Looking decisive, even though I think it would just be a waste of parliamentary time.
I think an absolute waste of parliamentary time. But again, I find it extraordinary. But yeah, at some point, when you've got a bit of spare half an hour on a Wednesday afternoon, could they pass a bill where if someone is convicted of a crime, they can no longer sit in the Lords? It would seem pretty bloody basic to me. I don't know. Why was that not already the case? You've got to ask. Hi, Archer, how are you? I mean, but come on, it's ridiculous.
Half of them be cleared out.
Yeah, absolutely. Other things going on in the House of Commons today. The Labour has got the second reading of their bid to lift the two-child benefit cap. And the latest research looks at basically by the end of the decade, you're looking at an extra 25 grand being paid out to thousands of Britain's biggest jobless families. Like, some of the people getting this are working, but most of the people who are getting the families who are getting this extra money for the third, fourth, fifth and sixth child are either no one's working, or only one parent's working and they're only working part-time. That's why they haven't got enough money. I'm sorry, I would be of the view that I think mum and dad should both be working full-time, and then we'll see if you've got enough money. And if you choose to have 6 kids, that's your choice. But we also know an awful lot of these families, as Nigel Farage has pointed out, are actually foreign-born families who, again, coming from a culture, lots of them Pakistani, lots of them Bangladeshi. Those are the stats where they come from cultures where you have a lot of kids. Well, that's fine if you can afford to do that in Pakistan and Bangladesh, but if you can't afford to do it in Bradford or in East London, I'm not quite sure why I'm subsidising that.
And especially the two-child benefit cap is so broadly popular with the public. I think it's
particularly with people who are on low income.
Exactly, which is always often the way with these supposedly horrible policies which beat up on the poor and whatever. There's often a lot of poor and working class people who get the problem with it because the perverse incentives it creates and the unfairness that gets built into the system. That's why I think Reform's policy was quite an interesting one insofar as saying that we should the two-child benefit cap as it currently stands might not work, but if you talk about limiting these benefits to people who are A, British citizens, and B, actually in work, this takes away a lot of the concerns that people would otherwise have. But the system as it currently is doesn't command public support. It's going to cost a hell of a lot of money, and I think it does create a kind of open goal to the right to say that not only is this kind of profligate, but also is disadvantaging people who are doing precisely the right thing.
Exactly.
So it's one of many issues in which the Labour Party is on the wrong side of the public, and is doing it purely to give a warm feeling to soft left backbench MPs.
And not a small point was making, a lot of the families who will benefit are Labour voters. That's the reality. They're strong Labour constituencies, and it's a sop to, again, it's sectarian politics. That's what's going on here. I think it's immoral. People say, well, do you want these children to suffer? No, I don't, but I'm not forcing them to suffer. The parents could go out and get a job. And if you can't get a job because you don't even speak English and you've got no skills, what the hell are you doing here anyway? Sorry, but the logic of their argument doesn't follow for me, and I think for an awful lot of people who get up every day to go to work and pay their taxes and want their taxes to go to things that are important, and people choosing to have as many sodding kids as they want while they don't go and work. I'm sorry. That's not on my to-do list this week. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and all the other topics we're talking about. Obviously, we're talking a lot about Epstein, but there's a hell of a lot to get through. Love to hear your thoughts. Do you think there will be a proper investigation, whether it's police, whether it's government, whatever it is, into Mandelson and into Andrew and their links with Jeffrey Epstein, or do you fear there'll be an establishment cover-up? Love to hear your thoughts. So 344 499 1000. We'll get your calls up next. This is Talk.
2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good morning. Welcome back. 11:29. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Let's go straight to your phone calls now. Matthew is in Warrington. And Matthew, do you trust there's going to be a proper investigation into Mandelson and Andrew, or do you fear a cover-up?
I think it'll be covered up because the files are in America. I think the Americans are just going to keep drip feeding what they've got, set the focus away from their people. They're just hanging out Mandelson and
it is weird, isn't it? Or is it just that those are the files that we're all focusing on because they're the Brits?
Yeah, but I also got a gut feeling that this could bring the government down. It could be like the was it Paul the scandal in the 60s with Paul Fid? I can't remember his
Profumo.
Oh, they did it could be a bit like that because there's a lot. They're looking deeper and deeper into these emails.
Yeah,
and it could, Starmer's judgment's been questioned again. Yeah. I think Andrew and Fergie are just embarrassing. Do you remember the toe sucking back in the day?
Don't.
Oh God, and my stomach turns.
Absolutely. But again, I think you're right. It's interesting about bringing the government down because, again, it's all about, I think Keir Starmer doesn't need any help doing that, to be fair. But it is interesting in terms of his judgment, his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney's judgment. A lot of this stuff about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein was known before he was appointed to the US ambassadorship. Not least his relationship with China as well. I mean, that alone to me was enough to say this guy. And also, I mean, he is a proven admitted liar, and therefore he's not suitable to be one of our most senior diplomat abroad. I mean, the judgment was really poor.
I think he got the job because they all know that he's got stuff on people. He's got where he is because he's got skeletons like sardines in his closet, and he could take a lot of people down. And I think the reason they kept bringing him back because he has stuff on people. He's a nasty little man. I remember him back in the day. He wasn't a pleasant person.
No, absolutely. He's got a very high view of you as well, I hear.
Well, I'm just a working man. I'm not bothered. He wants to have a conversation with me. I'm quite happy I've put him in his place.
Yeah, you would know it was mushy peas, not guacamole at the fish and chip shop. Remember that old gag about him?
Exactly.
Matthew, thank you. Very interesting call. Thank you so much. Jamie is in Wales. Wants to have his say. Hi, Jamie.
Oh, hi, Julia. Hi, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, so basically, I live in Lampeter, Ceredigion, West Wales, with my mum, Gay, and basically, the way I see it is that ex-Prince Andrew, he should show the British public that he's all about doing the right thing. So the main thing I would say to ex-Prince Andrew, if he's listening, is take yourself to America, face the music, face all the charges. You will have the respect of the public. You'll show bravery. You'll show the British public that you can do the right thing, and that would be a great example and a great opportunity.
And he's innocent. He's innocent. He just paid $10 million to Virginia Giuffre, even though he'd never met her. I mean, look, he's not going to go. He's not going to go and testify to Congress. He wouldn't even answer questions from the FBI on Zoom or over here. Do you think that the King or the Prime Minister, could anyone force him to do that?
Well, you know, what I'm saying is it's hard to force people to do the right thing. You know, you can appeal to their better nature. What I'd say is, you know, this is a very negative story for the royal family, and if the king wants to turn it around and turn a negative to a positive, what I'd say is, you know, Andrew was in the Falklands War. He can show bravery. Just show that same bravery. Go to America, face the music. You can be a brave person. You can do the right thing, and then answer all the charges. And you know, the reputation can be somewhat restored, and this negative can be turned to a positive.
It can only be restored if he was good at answering questions and he could answer them all completely honestly and exonerate himself. I don't know after that Newsnight interview that is a likely outcome. But Jamie, I admire your faith in these things. Thank you for calling. 11:33 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk to royal commentator Rafe Haydel-Mancu about all of this. We're also going to be talking in the next half hour about whether or not and why Scotland is still battling to be allowed to put rapist male prisoners who suddenly claim that they think they're women into women's prisons, and why we're going to see a raft of cases of young men and women who've been convinced into having horrific surgery to pretend that they are the opposite sex are going to actually be taking out a horrible load of legal cases against the butchers who did it to them. It's happened in the States. It's going to happen here. We'll talk to Helen Joyce about that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:35 is the time. Tom Slater is still with me, and we'll get his thoughts on what my next guest has to say. He's a royal commentator and senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, and he's Rafe Haydel-Mancu. A very good morning to you, Rafe.
Good morning to you, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Look, we've talked an awful lot about Peter Mandelson today, rather less so about Andrew. But girls, a lot of these Epstein files do actually focus on Andrew, and of course Sarah Ferguson's just extensive contact with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted of soliciting a 14-year-old girl for prostitution, while he was in prison, after being released from prison, contact since then, and the expectation of frankly of exchange of, shall we say, help to each other. What do you make of where Prince Andrew, ex-Prince Andrew and Fergie are right now? She's leaving all the charities, they're being closed down. He's out of his lodge, he's lost his title, he's lost his HRH. How does this leave them for the future?
Well, this is such an amazing story, isn't it? Because we all thought essentially he had now gone off into the wilderness, sent into exile on Marsh Farm, this dilapidated cottage on the Sandringham estate, to live out his days in obscurity. He must have thought the worst was over, and he's now back in the centre of the storm. Although I suppose he might be slightly grateful that there's some attention now being focused on Peter Mandelson for a change, rather than just on him. But of course, once again, this explodes all of his notions that he said to Emily Maitlis about being an honourable gentleman and trying to break things off with Epstein. We can see quite clearly he was lying through his teeth. He has maintained that relationship. And also now, of course, as wasn't the case before, his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, absolutely in the mire as well, with these fawning emails saying she wants to marry Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, marry me. I mean, and this was after his conviction.
That's the crucial point. This was after the conviction, even bringing her girls into the equation with Jeffrey Epstein, sending terrible emails as well about going off on on a holiday where you get up to naughty antics when you're a teenager. And of course, now, this is just the latest blow for her to lose her charity, Sarah's Trust. It's a small charity set up 5 years ago, but they've now decided to close down. This is the 8th charity that she has now lost, or that has distanced itself from her. She also, of course, had her books pulped that were supposed to be coming out. I mean, so all of her income streams, all of her public profile positions have gone. Whether she'll remake herself in America, that remains to be seen. There was a suggestion she could have done that a couple of months ago. I think now, given everything else that we've seen, much more unlikely that she'll be given a sofa with Oprah.
Yeah. Why don't we do a tell-all interview, a tell-all book? I mean, I wouldn't put it past her. I mean, but this is the thing. She's not actually accused of any wrongdoing. Prince Andrew, there are 2 women in Virginia Giuffre, got the £10 million payoff, even though he'd never met her, certainly hadn't had sex with her when she was 17, and trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein to London to see Prince Andrew, as he then was. But another woman has said that she was trafficked to meet him, with this 26-year-old Russian woman, very beautiful, very clever, to have dinner with. There's some horrible, really creepy photos. That photo of him on all fours over a woman lying flat on the ground. I mean, it's redacted. We can't see her face, but I don't even know whether the woman is conscious or not. I mean, it was just genuinely very, very, very creepy. But he seems to be far more implicated in all of this. So Sarah Ferguson is just a matter of her being money-grubbing and having no judgment. I mean, I have to say, taking her 19 and 20-year-old daughters to go and visit Jeffrey Epstein for lunch in his home, with him, of course, paying for the plane journeys. Of course, she wouldn't pay for her own plane journeys. Basically, a couple of days after he'd been let out of prison for soliciting a 14-year-old girl for sex, blows my mind as a mum, sending him photos of his daughters. I'm lucky for her. I think her daughters were not of his physical type, judging by the pictures we've seen of the women who were being girls routinely raped by Jeffrey Epstein. So lucky them. But when it comes to Andrew, the former prince, the allegations are much more serious. There's a lot of talk about, will he testify in Congress? Will he be forced to? Would he go? But even the king doesn't have that power. And it's clear the king has no truck with Andrew and hasn't for many years.
Yeah, there's nothing more that the king can actually do. He's done everything within his power to strip Andrew of all titles and honours. Only Parliament can strip him of his dukedom. He remains His Grace the Duke of York in law. He's not His Royal Highness the Duke of York. He is His Grace the Duke of York, although we don't call him that. Congress can't subpoena non-Americans to come over there. Yeah. Congress is limited. There is something called a Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty that the Department of Justice can ask British authorities to use to secure testimony, and that would require Andrew to appear before a UK judge, probably Westminster Magistrates Court, something like that, under oath. But even there, you do have the right against self-incriminations. Yeah. And even if he's compelled to appear there, he can exercise his right and refuse to answer specific questions. And he can't be and you can only extradite somebody once they have a criminal charge against them. Yeah. So the only thing you can appeal to is to Andrew's decency.
Oh, well, good luck with that. We're all chuckling in the studio now. I don't think I'm thinking that. No, we had 2 very interesting guests on yesterday. We had Dickie Arbiter, who was former press secretary to the late Queen Elizabeth. We also had Di Davies, who's head of Royal Protection some of this time, with Diana, before a lot of this. But both of them were very clear that their view that, look, information about, where Andrew was and who he was with would absolutely, have been held by his Royal Protection officers. And for goodness sake, they were with him. They knew he was on this island or on the home of a man who, oh, look, Jeffrey Epstein, is that the same guy who's been convicted? Due diligence would have required them to know that this man had this conviction. And other information. They would have seen a lot of things. Again, everyone else who worked there or went to this guy's house saw nothing but 14 and 50-year-old girls, for goodness sake. And the man didn't have a daughter. They weren't their friends, And then they report it up the chain, and it would go to very senior levels, and that would be reported to senior figures in Buckingham Palace, including, the Queen's, private secretary. That information would have got that far. The question is, would it have gone as far as the then Queen at the time? What do you think?
I think I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was decided that wouldn't be information that would be worth the Queen knowing to distress her personally.
Because she was elderly, he was her favourite son. best that she doesn't know.
Yeah, but best off that she doesn't know. What you don't know can't hurt you.
But she must have known something when she helped, by all accounts, this 10 million or whatever the figure was, but around then, to Virginia Giuffre, for a woman, Prince Andrew, who'd never met. He didn't have that money. She apparently helped fund that. What did she think that money was for?
Well, I mean, again, in terms of not informing her, that would give Her Majesty plausible deniability as well about all of this. But yes, obviously, the key issue there was that there was no admission of guilt. This was just to make a story go away. Whether the Queen was advised on all the details of this or whether she was just advised, lawyers say it's not worth us dragging this through the courts or having a huge story. It's worth paying the money to push the story away. She could easily have been remained in the dark about all of the details, even under that situation and scenario. You know, Her Majesty wasn't across all details of these sorts of things at all. But what it does draw, yes, these police protection officers were with Andrew during these visits. Things were known. But same thing with Mandelson, right?
Yep.
What happened to our vetting systems in this country? The due diligence, basic trawling of the internet and so forth would have revealed a lot more than apparently our intelligence services were able to.
I mean, in people's defence, you talk about, Epstein, the 2004 conviction. I mean, that wasn't in the British papers. He wasn't that well known here. Certainly was in American papers. But again, people like Mandelson and Andrew knew of this because he said basically it was it was fitted up and it wasn't true. And so they were aware of these allegations. And of course, that was pleaded down to the two charges involving one girl, whereas in fact there were, I think, 28 at the time who were complaining of having been trafficked in the same way. The question we're asking our audience, just finally, do you trust there'll be a proper investigation, or do you fear an establishment cover-up? What's your answer to that, Rafe?
I would hope that given the amount of cover-ups that have been exposed as being cover-ups and lies and duplicity, that we will now finally get the truth, because as we all know, the cover-up is often worse than the scandal itself. Nothing is worse than this scandal, but the cover-up so far and the selective, you often think that Mandelson has a split personality. He can't actually remember anything that his past
terrible memory
ever did. I think it's, public trust has been so eroded. Mandelson's there for misconduct in public office. The criminal threshold for that is whether you have destroyed public trust in the institution of your office. I think for everybody involved, we do need clear transparency with this investigation.
I wish I shared your confidence in that. Rafe Haydel-Mankey, thank you as always. Thomas Slater, a lot of people say cover-ups worse. Doesn't mean that's not going to try and stop them trying to carry on with more cover-ups, though. No,
I think that's an entirely fair point. I guess the question is who is in control of this now and what incentives do they have to cover it up? If you're talking about the Labour Party trying to keep a lid on the unsavoury things that one of their most famous sons has been getting up to, that's one thing. But if you're talking about the authorities getting involved, yes, they can be subject to political pressure, but at the same time they're subject to a whole other form of pressure, which is like, surely you're going to throw the book at this guy. Wouldn't it be embarrassing and toothless not to? So we'll see how this pans out. But at the very least, it's out there in the public domain now. And also a reminder that journalism and political rows like this can expose things even when they have been covered up in the past. Absolutely, absolutely. And again, the internet. Really good thing, the internet, sometimes. It really is. 11:45 is the time. Going to take a quick break. Love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have you say on any of the topics, including our next one. We're going to be talking to Helen Joyce from Sex Matters about the latest efforts by governments in this country to not obey the law as set out quite clearly by the Supreme Court when it comes to who's a man and who's a woman. That's up next. This is Talk.
brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk. 11:49 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk right now about the latest of trans stories, because there's never a day when there isn't some story in the news, but one I think is quite encouraging news. And that's happened stateside. We'll talk about them both with Helen Joyce. She's Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters and author of the brilliant book Trans, Gender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. Good morning to you, Helen.
Good morning, Julia.
Let's start this side of the Atlantic right now, and let's talk about what's going on in Scotland. And For Women Scotland, those wonderful campaigning women who won that statement of the bleeding obvious insanity in reality at the Supreme Court last April, that basically when you're deciding whether a man is a man or a woman is a woman, it all comes down to biological sex, and that's kind of it, rather than what you think you are. They're in court once again, this time against the Scottish Government.
That's right. So on that day when For Women Scotland got that judgment in the Supreme Court about the Equality Act, that sex means sex, not paperwork, a lawyer who was sitting there with me, I was there in the court, turned around to me and she said to me, there's nothing left for us to do.
Oh, bless.
And here we are. The government has not put that into practice. It's sitting on the guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, and now For Women Scotland is having to take its own government, the Scottish Government, to court again after it lost in the Supreme Court, and this time it's about prisons. The Scottish Government, unlike the government elsewhere in the UK, puts men who identify as women into women's prisons unless it can be proved that those men are a serious risk to women, and its standard for that is that those men, for example, raped, tortured and murdered women. So it's willing to move men who raped and murdered and tortured men into women's prisons. Yeah, because that's fine. Like, they aren't going to go with the women that they're in with. And there are indeed murderers and torturers, male murderers and torturers in the women's estate right now, and have been for years in Scotland. And the Scottish Government says that it's those men's human rights. So their human rights matter, and their human rights are so important, and it's so convinced that the European Court of Human Rights is on its side on this, that it's actually compulsory for the government to dragoon women into being like supporting actresses in these men's fantasies of being women, and that is what human rights means. So For Women Scotland is standing up there again. It's got the same barrister, Aidan O'Neill, KC, making the same arguments that sex is real.
But I mean, this is the thing, we all remember the Isla Bryson case, a double rapist convicted of raping two different women who then put on a wig, and you know, he had his meat and two veg clearly on show through his leggings. He wasn't even trying to convince anyone. He was taking the mick, and he's decided during his the criminal justice process. So it turns out he thought he was Isla Bryson, obviously not his real name, that he was a woman, a trans woman, and we had that absurd situation of Nicola Sturgeon, then First Minister of Scotland, defending the rights of a double rapist to be put in a prison cell with women, arguing that, is Isla Bryson a man or a woman? Isla Bryson is a rapist. Well, is Isla Bryson a man or a woman rapist? I mean, certainly in English law, I think in Scottish law, technicality, you can't be a rapist unless you are a man. What with needing that particular appendage that we don't have? But this is actually why is this a hill they want to die on? Why, as you say, we all thought the Supreme Court ruling, that'll be it. We've got Bridget Phillipson, the Equalities Minister in the Westminster government, refusing, basically sitting for months now. I think, was it last September? The Equality and Human Rights Commission sent their guidance on... I don't know why we needed guidance after that Supreme Court ruling, but apparently we did. They've sent that to that she wants to make sure everything's inclusive. Well, you can either have a women-only space or not a women-only space. It's not complicated. She's sitting on that. Again, it seems to be a hill to die for an awful lot, whether it's Labour or SNP. Why? Why are they so adamant about the rights of not just men who identify and think that they're women, but male criminals, often sex criminals, who claim to be women?
I mean, it's puzzling, isn't it? You have to wonder what's being said behind the scenes, because, of course, there are people on the fringes of the Labour Party or SNP, and also in Scotland, the Greens offer support, and they really are all in on gender self-ID. Yeah. So that might be part of it. I also think that women in prison, most people just don't care about prisoners at all. Yeah. They think that maybe we can do a risk assessment, but we know that very few rapes are even reported to the police. So why do we think that a man who has raped and tortured and murdered men might not turn his attentions to women?
But also we know that the vast majority of women who are in prison actually have been victims of abuse by parent figures or by partners.
Absolutely.
And that's incredibly common. And therefore they're already victims.
And then the other thing I'd say is that I think there has been a lot of misunderstanding. I mean, the Supreme Court judges said this, and the HRC has acknowledged it. There's been a lot of misunderstanding of the law. And for 15 years, the great and the good were telling us that if you had that magic piece of paper, it really did change your sex for the purposes of law.
Magically.
The Supreme Court said it didn't. But those people still kind of believe that, and believe that they can't just say men are men and women are women. We have to protect, vulnerable men in the men's estate. That they will face human rights claims, and I think they might too. But they'd win them.
Yeah, well, exactly. But also there are still, I believe, 4 men in women's prisons in England as well.
Yes, so they're held in a separate wing, Downview Wing E, which I still don't think is a good solution.
They can still be held in a separate wing in a men's prison.
Exactly, but the thing is, the reason for that, and you will not believe this, the reason is so they can socialise with women and learn to be women more convincingly. That's the actual stated reason in the policy. Well, they can go off and do their cosplaying on their own, thanks, not be bothering the women with it.
Sorry, I almost said some really bad words on air, though. So I had to really stop it defies me. This is, when we have these conversations, this is the whole sort of like, is everyone else listening to this? This is Alice in Wonderland madness. And again, I think, I was perhaps less confident than you were on the Supreme Court Judgment Day that this was going to be over. And the likes, some people like Piers Morgan writing books like Woke is Dead. Yeah, woke is, it is so...
Well, you were right.
It's embedded in our schools, in academia, in our politics, in our civil service, in the NHS. I mean, it's all over the place. Let's talk about where it is in the NHS state, because really interesting case. A landmark decision at a New York court in the last week has seen a young woman by the name of Fox Varian. She had her breast cut off by doctors while a teenager so that she could, quote, live as a boy. She has won $2 million in compensation for her suffering. It's expected to spark thousands more lawsuits in the US and in Britain. And basically, she's now 22. She, was very confused, thought she was a boy. She claimed in court, and her parents, as usual, parents were told, as they always are, your kid's going to commit suicide if you don't agree to the transgender drugs, and then carrying on and having her breast cut off, which is something very much encouraged by the pro-trans movement within our NHS right now. Young men having their penises and their testicles removed. It's just extraordinary. But we've seen this happening to 18 and 19-year-olds here as well. And basically, she says, look, she expressed doubts, but they said, no, and pushed her into it. She's won her case. I'm surprised it's only $2 million. I'm surprised it's not $2 billion, frankly, for what they've done to her. Do you think that we are going to see more cases? And will this finally try and stop doctors from pushing this horrific butchery on our young people?
Well, I'm never again after the Supreme Court judgment saying there's nothing left for us to do. So I do think it's an incredibly positive step, obviously in America first. So most of these cases actually fall down on procedural grounds, or they're out of time or that sort of thing. And they tend to get settled anyway out of court. So for this to go to court and to get what is a sizable judgment, the thing I think it's going to do first in America is make insurers look at it. I mean, if I were a medical malpractice insurance firm, I would not insure gender medicine anymore. It's too clearly the mood
too
is
big a risk,
changing.
and that means you then won't do it. Doctors won't do it.
Exactly. And then you see the hospital decide that this is not a line that they will do. So that's the way I think it'll play out in America. Now here, of course, these things are being done almost entirely by the NHS, and the NHS self-insures, and it has an organisation called NHS Resolutions that deals with all the medical malpractice claims, of which there are lots. And I'm not saying all of them are justified, but there just are a lot. And nearly everything gets settled, and we never find out about it.
Yeah,
so
that's the
worry. There are already cases being settled.
I'd be very surprised if there aren't. And again, isn't it fascinating though? It's always money that talks in the end. They're making, doctors get their all the acclaim because they're the top doctor in this field. They're getting paid to do these operations, and in America as well in the private healthcare. But then if the insurance is pulled and then they can't do it, or they're getting sued, then it stops. Rather than maybe we shouldn't be cutting completely healthy breasts or completely healthy genitals of completely healthy children who are really confused and suffering from often, ADHD, autism, or often, frankly, just gay and a bit confused and have got parents who haven't supported that. It is the biggest scandal of our time. It really, really is, and it's extraordinary it's still going on. But little glimmers of hope give us hope that one day this will suddenly just, like the Salem Witch Trials, one day it just stops. Helen Joyce, you've been fantastic on all of this. Thank you for joining us as always. Tom Slater, I mean, you've got to get hopeful that these court cases will finally put this to bed.
No, exactly. At the end of the day, money talks, the law talks, and I think this day was always coming. It was always going to be part of the reckoning, and will hopefully just be one in amongst many kind of decisive blows to this whole system.
I want and there's lots of people trying to do it privately as well. I want everyone bankrupted. I mean, I frankly, I want them in court. I really do. I want them in jail. I think it's genuinely. And again, it is amazing that it's money rather than concern for vulnerable children that is actually going to be the thing that actually changes this. Extraordinary. Coming up, we are going to be taking a quick break for the news. Then we're going to be talking to the journalist John Sweeney. He's the author of Hunting Ghislaine, Epstein, the Prince and the Presidents, a gripping expose of corruption and child abuse. I wonder if he's surprised by anything we've seen in the Epstein files, and what does he think in terms of a proper investigation and whether or not they'll actually be an establishment cover-up. Well, that's up next. You don't want to miss it. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. It's 2 minutes past midday. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, I very much appreciate you joining us. If you've missed anything of the show already, lots of top guests and opinion, go to my YouTube page. You know what it's called. It's easy to find. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. There's no excuse not to find it. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about the police examining claims that Peter Mandelson repeatedly leaked confidential documents to Epstein. Talk about high-level cover-ups. Well, will they end? Will there be another establishment cover-up? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Don't forget you can send us a text as well on 87222. Send us a message on X at talkTV, and calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message, but of course posts on X are free. We're also going to be talking about thousands of criminals who are roaming the streets without ankle tags when they're supposed to have ankle tags, and NASA delaying that launch of the rocket to the moon that was due to set off on Sunday after a fuel leak. We'll talk to our favourite space boffin about that. Right now, let me introduce you once again to Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, who's joining me throughout the whole show, and also joining us in the studio, delighted to say, me old bucker, met him many a year ago, 1997, working on a general election campaign. John Sweeney, journalist and author of... Now, this book title will tell you exactly why he's in the studio today. He's author of Hunting Ghislaine, Epstein, the Prince and the Presidents, a gripping expose of corruption and child abuse. Very good afternoon to you, John.
Good afternoon, Julia.
It's lovely to see you. Wish it was under nicer circumstances, because at the end of the day, as much as a lot of us are sort of, especially journalists, rubbing our hands with glee about very powerful men being exposed for, well, alleged wrongdoing, actually this is, we have to keep remembering, this is about hundreds, realistically, maybe even more than that, of young girls, 14, 15-year-olds and older women in their late teens and 20s, being targeted, groomed, trafficked, raped and abused, and basically put out for any man in the circle of which Jeffrey Epstein moved for their own pleasure. It's a disgusting litany of crimes. The man most guilty, of course, is already dead, whether suicide or murder in a New York jail. But long before he was charged with the most serious crimes back in 2019, it was known that he was doing this because he already had a conviction for soliciting a 14-year-old girl for prostitution. And yet, some of the world's most powerful, rich men decided to stay friends with him. Prince Andrew, as was, very much included in that, and indeed Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, maybe one day going back to Peter Mandelson, who then became our ambassador to the United States. First of all, from your investigations, what did Jeffrey Epstein have that pulled so many people to him? Was it just the money, or was there something else?
He had some of the riz, as they call charisma these days. He was an extraordinarily skillful manipulator, and two of the people he manipulated were Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump is friends with Epstein for 11 years, so he's in a frame.
They move in the same circles, you know.
Yeah, but they were closer than that, way closer. It wasn't just bumping into people.
Yeah.
So, and these, I mean, we're not just talking about an extremely stupid member of our royal family,
Yeah.
or even stupider former business secretary. Peter, formerly, I'm just going to announce it, formerly Lord Mandelson.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
By the way, you know, I think the old Bill are going to nick him.
I don't see how, unless these emails are completely made up. I don't see how.
So there's a weight of them, and there's 4 or 5 massive leaks of what is national security information.
Yeah.
And the point about Epstein is, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's a former MI6 officer this morning about it, and what he was saying is he's a man who's sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars worth of other people's money. So what he does is, and this is classically what he did with this guy Wexner, Les Wexner, who was the founder of Victoria's Secrets. He said to him, "Give me your money, I will look after it. Give me power of attorney, as if you're a gaga old lady or old bloke like me, and I will take all of the risk, and I'll park it in places where the American taxman might not know all about it, but I take the risk.
And it was a $4 billion
It was a
fund.
big pot of money, so he's sitting on that money. So you tell him, as it seems now, fair play, I believe in the presumption of innocence, and I'd like to hear from Lord Mandelson in particular about, what happened, but let's be fair. In the late 2020, when I'm making the Hunting Gillem podcast, which leads to my book, Hunting Gillem, I phone up Lord Mandelson and I go, Lord Mandelson, you're in Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book. Why is that, Lord Mandelson? And Lord Mandelson goes, John, I'm terribly sorry.
That's very Mandelson.
I'm terribly sorry, I'm on a Zoom. But can I just phone you back in a tinkle? Click. He never phoned me back.
I'm so surprised.
Now, but what about the Cabinet Office, and what about MI5, and what are they doing for their money?
But this is the thing, isn't it? Because so we'll come back to it, because the big focus today in the last couple of days has been on Lord Mandelson, and you're unlikely to keep that page. And the allegations are that again and again repeat. Well, he keeps coming back to government. Because question marks over Keir Starmer's judgment, his chief of staff Morgan McSweeney's judgment, trying to push for Mandelson to come back, given his history of lying and the relationship with Epstein, etc. But in terms of the allegations that have come out in the last couple of days, certainly there are 4 very specific allegations of, Epstein responding to emails that are forwarded to him, it would appear to be by Lord Mandelson, of absolutely vital financial information, which benefits financially Jeffrey Epstein and his clients, and could actually be to detriment to the British taxpayer and the British government. We were talking about this, is this, misconduct of public office, insider trading? I would say this goes as far as treason. He was an officer he was a minister of the Crown.
I mean, listen, the building appropriate for this is just across the river. It's called the Tower of London. and I think Peter Mandelson should enter through the Traitor's Gate. He gave away the crown jewels to a convicted paedophile. And by the way, we talk about, there's no evidence of alleged wrongdoing. Well, actually, there is simple wrongdoing in my book, and listen, I'm not a fancy lawyer, but it works like this. If you accept money from a convicted paedophile and you're in government, i.e. you're an elected minister, then that's wrong.
Yes.
And that's doing wrong.
It's kind of full stop at that point, isn't it?
It is,
but again,
and that's why he didn't answer my question.
In his defence, John Sweeney, he has no recollection of he couldn't remember Ronaldo getting that 10 grand. His husband, he couldn't remember the 75k that appeared in his bank account. He doesn't remember any of it. Again, it's amazing how successful he's been with such bad memory.
But just let's look at the evidence, right? There's 4 or 5 big leaks, crown jewel stuff, national security level stuff, right?
This is about the big bailout of the banks. This is selling national assets to bail out the banks.
If it was some lowly person in Treasury, in Her Majesty's Treasury, His Majesty's Treasury now, leaked that. The Queen's been on the stamp so long, you forget there's now a king. Sorry, show my age. But that person, having leaked that, would have gone to prison for 20, 25 years. So that's one piece of evidence. The second piece of evidence is, did Mandelson, or his boyfriend now, his husband, did they receive money? Yeah. Now, actually, there are all sorts of stories. There's one number of $2 million, some kind of property in Brazil, but the email chain isn't clear.
Yeah.
But there's £10,000 for
there's an osteopathy course.
It's
just weird.
I've got a bad shoulder at the moment, and I went for a massage. It cost me 45
No, this
quid.
was him to train to be.
Oh, is it?
Yes,
yes. Training. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, I don't know, but listen.
Yeah. But again, his husband was well enough off that he could have funded it himself.
But if somebody if some rich convicted paedophile gave my girlfriend $10,000,
I'd want to know why.
Yeah, I'd say, what the hell is this?
Here's the thing.
Remember.
Okay, as you said, you mentioned this point, and actually we hadn't brought it up, but again, there is this, again, it's a confusing trail, and we have to be very careful in these things, of Mandelson apparently looking to purchase sort of basically, you know, outside of, you know, via a tax haven. This $2 million property in Rio, in Brazil. His partner, of course, is Brazilian. We don't know whether that happened or not. But again, most of these allegations involve sums in the thousands. We're talking about a man who was worth, at some point, billions, a billionaire financier, a minimum multi-millionaire.
We're talking about Epstein.
Epstein.
Yep.
He had the most expensive house in Manhattan. He owned an island, for goodness sake. He had his private jet. He was throwing money around at people, like anyone you know who was important. And yet we're looking at Mandelson. OK, he gets to stay in his apartment in Paris and for some reason gets photographed in his tighty-whities. He goes to the island. Apparently he sees nothing, but he's gay. He plays his gay card. He saw nothing. He wouldn't be involved in that.
And by the way...
all of that. But we're talking about tens of thousands of pounds. That's the bit that confuses me. Why not millions?
Well...
if that was what was going on.
By the way, another piece of evidence, and remember, I'm just a simple old hack, and I'm not a fancy lawyer. But my lovely accountant, Stephen, went to school with Peter Mandelson, and my lovely accountant has worked hard his entire life. But by the way, he doesn't like Peter Mandelson one little bit.
Many people do.
But they were both bright North London Jewish kids with not that much money. And my lovely accountant has done well in life, but he's not loaded. Peter Mandelson, however, last time I looked, he has a fancy house in Regent's Park. He's staying in somewhere fancy in Wiltshire at the moment. I mean, you don't make the kind of money he's ended up with.
From being an MP, a government minister, a European commissioner.
So there's something now, obviously, at some point when he leaves business secretary, he starts working for Wall Street. Did Jeffrey Epstein help him get there? Well, that's what the email
Some of the suggestions he helped get a job, paid $4 million a year. Yeah.
But the simple bit of evidence is there are 4 or 5 massive email leaks looking like from Mandelson to Epstein. By the way, all of us here believe in the presumption of innocence.
Absolutely.
And I'm very happy for Peter Mandelson, whatever it is, 6 years on from when I called him about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, to phone me up. He's got my number and to say, hey, Sweeney,
he spoke to Katie Balls of the Times, but he did an interview.
No, but it's not. But listen, Katie Balls is very nice. I'm less nice.
I know, no.
But if you're MI5 or the Cabinet Office, I would like them to ask the question, why didn't he answer Sweeney's question? And the way to do this is to bore me with some bland answer or even fire off some legal letter.
But he didn't.
But just play silent. That means, to me, he's got secrets to hide, and he has.
And again, saying I have no recollection, as opposed to, that didn't happen. I did not receive 75 grand from this man. I know that.
Phooey.
Yeah, exactly. But this is it. OK, so in this interview with Katie Balls, there's a lot of stuff about how awful he felt like being killed without actually dying. The life-changing crisis of being sacked as the ambassador. Exactly. We're not very convinced. But he also said, it's difficult for people to make that distinction. He says about Epstein, not the same figure as he knew, as people thought they knew when he was alive, as he is now. It's difficult for people to make that distinction because in most people's minds there's one Epstein, one flow of information. They didn't know him. But like everyone else, I learnt the truth about him after his death, which was 2019, not in the early noughties. That's simply not true because he already had that conviction in 2004. He says he was a master manipulator, a word that you used as well. He says, I can see that now, but the point is that his victims certainly did know what he was doing. He says his relationship to Epstein was not like everyone else's. He wants to refer to financier, of course, as his best pal. And he says, I don't know what his motives were, probably mixed, but he provided guidance to help me navigate out of the world of politics and into the world of commerce and finance. Perhaps he wanted to be a mentor, and I was naive in regarding him as a good faith actor. Do you believe for a moment that Peter Mandelson has ever been naive?
No, not a second. And by the way, one thing you just said, no, he was convicted in 2008, not 2004.
2008, yeah.
But I think the evidence is overwhelming that he's in serious trouble, and I think the police down the track have got every good reason to nick him because you can prove both the leaks and money. At the moment, it looks like you can only prove the $10,000. Yeah. He's admitted that. That's a mistake.
But he'll be able to access his own bank records. They'll exist.
Enough. And you would have thought the old Bill could, even, difficult times as it is for the Met. But the big picture is, why on earth did Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, appoint him as our ambassador? And I can remember being shocked when that happened.
And we discussed it on this show. When that
happened. And I have to say, listen, I don't think Keir Starmer's corrupt. I just think he's a bit dull. But but actually, this is a horrible misjudgment, and I actually think that Keir Starmer. I think if the police arrest Peter Mandelson for corruption, and I think on the face of this evidence, and everybody, I do believe the presumption of innocence, and Mandelson is open.
There's a case to answer.
There's a case to answer, and there's a case for him to answer journalists' questions. But if the police arrest Mandelson, then I think our Prime Minister should resign. He should never...
Because of the poor judgment.
Because of that job, it's not a Mickey Mouse job. So the question
I've been asking my audience today,
yes.
and pretty much everyone is saying they do think there'll be an establishment cover-up, like with the grooming gangs. And again, for me, that's just a postcode difference. It's just less salubrious raping of 14-year-old girls in terms of over a kebab shop rather than on a private island in the Caribbean. But there was an establishment cover-up, which was that, OK, people thought it was wrong, but basically you open that can of worms, implicates that person, it damages institutions. So that's where we're leading to, not just the Labour Party. We know Mandelson knows where all the bodies are buried, for goodness sake. He's been around a very long time. He's not called the Prince of Darkness for nothing. We also have the situation with Andrew, accused of very, very different crimes. Again, innocent until proven guilty, no charges have ever been brought against him. But there are now two women, one sadly now dead, but was paid 10 grand by him, who, although he'd never met her, certainly hadn't had sex with her. But two women now claiming they were trafficked to have sex with Prince Andrew. He has denied any wrongdoing. We've got some creepy photos. We don't have evidence, specific evidence of any crime. But do you think that his interest in Epstein was just because he's money grubbing and never met a billionaire he didn't like? What evidence do you think there is against him, and how damaging is all of this for him, other than he's being dragged through the mud on the front pages again?
It's bad. I thought the Daily Star's headline "Creepy Crawler" was brilliant. And I also feel that I want to know all these pictures. By the way, the newspapers are saying, there's Prince Andrew with a woman. Well, she's a very slight woman. So she looks like a child to me.
I know, to me as well. And we don't even know whether she's conscious.
So who knows? But at that time, he was still our trade envoy, therefore our taxes. I don't know, you pay taxes on Spice But our taxes have gone to pay for him. So I think because of that, then we as the public and we have a right to know what's the context. And this is the problem with all of this. By the way, the other person we haven't mentioned yet, but we should do big time, it is Donald Trump.
Yep.
Because the Epstein files, I've written a post about it for my Patreon followers. It's all free. People can read it online on my Twitter @JohnSweeneyRaw. And it says, thank you very much, we're in showbiz, remember, but we're also actually citizens, and this is horrible. Yep. But what we've got here is a kind of horrible, sick culture of denial where power and money has been able to block proper scrutiny.
Bearing in mind, Donald Trump has said that the files exonerate him. We haven't seen all the files yet. He did say he would publish them all. Elon Musk claimed he didn't publish them because he was in them. I mean, a lot of these... basically, as far as we can tell, everyone was in contact with Elon Musk until they weren't. The question is when you stopped and why you stopped. What are the issues for Donald Trump in particular?
So, if he denies stuff, liar, liar, pants on fire, his problem is what I call the Epstein files. It's the Epstein sewer, but he's the man who's blown it up. He's put a bomb in this sewer, bang. And the reason he did this was, and it's a kind of delayed action fuse, because he did it in 2020 when he was out of power. He said to Joe Biden, release the files. Yeah. And part of the problem was at least some of the files were connected with the Ghislaine Maxwell prosecution in the States, and because it was an active court case, they couldn't do so. However, then he gets in power in 2024 and everybody says, well, now you're in power, release the files. And actually the Republicans in Congress has forced his hand.
Exactly.
And the DOJ tried to weed stuff of Trump, but there's more than enough, which is horrible.
Yeah.
Now, what should happen in proper democracies is that in Britain, we have public inquiries. Far too many public inquiries take too long, and all that happens is the lawyers get lots of money. So, in a funny way, I think the police inquiry should happen. But also in the States, you have things like, for example, the Warren Commission into the killing of JFK, or the Congress Commission into 9/11. And both of them were excellent reports, which, for my mind at least,
very detailed and much quicker than we.
But the problem is that Trump's contempt for proper process and his lack of respect for due process means that I think I'm very worried about getting an honest and clean inquiry by the United States government while Trump still has its hands.
I think on both sides on that. I think the divisions in American politics means that people don't want to just sort of get to the bottom of it. And again, both sides, very senior, well-known figures, former presidents or presidents are implicated.
But the tragedy, please let me finish this point.
Yeah.
The tragedy is, Julia, that this poisons our public square. It poisons our belief in democracy, and you know, behind the high walls of the Kremlin.
And our trust and everything. Oh yeah, they're having a great laugh, aren't they?
And did they? I mean, with Epstein, he's going to see Putin according to this.
The links with Putin were very strong in the Epstein files.
And I'd like to know. And one of the weird things, and Gary Kasparov, who's breaking news better than me at chess. So Kasparov is saying what's weird about the files is that the Russians are missing. It's as if they're not the hunted, they're the hunters. And that, I saw that.
Can I just ask you one final point about Ghislaine Maxwell, because her lawyers put through documents in the courts just before this big tranche of emails and documents that appeared, basically alleging, look, she's behind bars and banged to rise, but she's the only person who's been convicted of any of these crimes, and she's the only woman, and she claims, her lawyers on behalf, that some 30 men have basically been given indemnity and they're not facing prosecution. Now, we know there was that deal for Jeffrey Epstein and all of his associates back in 2008 when he was convicted of soliciting a 14-year-old for prostitution. Do you think that there are, I mean, let's face it, rich, these aren't going to be the gardeners who are getting this, the rich and powerful men, maybe politicians, maybe royals and others, who are basically getting away scot-free?
Well, there's a lot of evidence in the files which needs to be checked out. Now, anybody who investigates anything, this can be the FBI, the Met, or even simple journalists like us, you come across a story, it's shocking, you look into it, and then you find there's a problem.
Yeah.
So, for example, Nick, who said that Lord Bramwell, the former Chief of Defence Staff, and the former European Commissioner Leon Britton were pedos, and it was all nonsense, and Nick ended up in prison for perverting the course of justice.
And for paedophilia.
And so there is, so some of the time the truth is twisted with fantasy, and separating the strands out is hard and difficult. Fair play, we've got to accept that. However, I was shocked by this data dump. I was shocked by the terms
Even knowing all you know already.
All that I know already.
Very interesting.
We're all shocked by it, and I think we need proper and fast and open and transparent inquiries. But that is the reason why I think our Prime Minister needs to fall on his sword. He made a terrible mistake in giving Peter Mandelson, a known associate of a convicted paedophile, this great job. He should not have done that. And for the proper clearing up of this stink, the Prime Minister needs to go.
Either he was told by the security services everything was fine, he wasn't. If the security services said everything was fine, then we've got some issues with them. Look, we could talk about this for 2 hours, but unfortunately our time is up. John Sweeney, journalist, author of, again, it's just such a great book title because it says it all, Hunting Ghislaine, Epstein, the Prince and the Presidents, a gripping expose of corruption and child abuse. And again, you go to Patreon and you can find it via your X figures post as well. Let me just bring Tom Slater in, listening to all of that in the studio with us. Do you think actually this is going to end up, rather than I don't know, Andy Burnham or the local elections, this could be the thing that brings down Keir Starmer?
I mean, you never know what's going to set the ball rolling. I mean, this is a scandal on a scale that makes many of the previous thrills and spills that have enveloped Keir Starmer look piddling in comparison.
Did he have a beer during lockdown?
I would be very surprised if at the very least Morgan McSweeney doesn't go, his Chief of Staff, who is obviously very tightly... Exactly. Yeah. I don't see any way in which he is at least treated as a sacrificial lamb, but still, could this be the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer? Quite possibly, given it speaks to his lack of judgment, and also the fact that when you, as a government, have nothing else to point to, no other successes, no other momentum, things like this will crush you in a way that they otherwise couldn't. And what a deal was struck there.
People that was sarcasm. Really good to talk to you. Thank you, John Slater, for joining us. John Sweeney, fabulous to have you in the studio. Hope you come back again. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that, and particularly answering the question, do you fear an establishment cover-up, or will there be a proper investigation? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Your call's up next. This is Talk.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. Well, that was a very interesting conversation there with John Sweeney. Love to hear your reactions to that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. John is in Stoke-on-Trent. Good afternoon to you, John. What do you want to say?
Well, if I was Keir Starmer, I would have rung Alistair Campbell up, I would have rung Gordon Brown up, and I would have rung... I can't think...
Well, anyone who's ever met Mandelson.
And I would have said, I'm thinking of making him the New York ambassador. Yeah. What do you think? And all of them would have said, don't touch him with a barge pole. He's asleep, you know.
Well, the thing is, why would you need to ask a former Prime Minister about making him a Washington ambassador when everything was in the public domain already?
Yeah, but they would have told him, don't touch him with a barge pole, and he went ahead and did it. So he's got no judgment at all, has he? But
he's already sacked him. So lots of people would say, well, he got sacked last year. Does that mean? I mean, John Sweeney seems to think, this could bring Keir Starmer down.
Yeah, has he got a hold over him?
I'm telling you, Peter Mandelson got a hold over everyone. No, that's how he operates. I'm telling you, there are people who are there going, seriously, don't go in hard. Even down to, I don't think we want to take his peerage away. That's going to be too much bother. It'll involve an act of parliament, all that. Genuinely, there'll be people saying, don't poke the lion or poke the bear anymore. He's going to get very, very nasty. And I would be really surprised if that isn't what's happening behind the scenes. I really would. I mean, I wouldn't put anything past him. John, thank you for that. You're not believing any of this nonsense. David is in Gloucestershire. David, what do you want to say?
Hi, Julia. Well, very quickly, the first thing is, will it ever get sorted out? I doubt it. There'll be a massive cover-up. I said to my wife this morning, I said I should be dancing around the bedroom this morning to hear that Starmer and the Labour Party are finished over this, but I know it won't happen. But what I really rang about was I said, well, Starmer came in on the last election with his big halo. We're going to be whiter than white, cleaner than clean. We're going to clean up politics. We're not going to have any of this corruption, all the different things, oh, yes, aren't we going to be good with politics? What was it? Country over party.
Yeah, all of that nonsense.
Total rubbish. And then what's this proved? They are 100 times. This is 100 times worse than anything the Conservatives did. And I'm no Conservative supporter. Yeah. But I am saying this is 100 times worse. This is.
Here's the thing. Could it have been the Tories if the Tories were in power at the time when this was all happening? I mean, that's, bearing in mind, by the way, that Peter Mandelson went on to work closely and advise George Osborne. Remember that picture we had of him urinating in the street in Notting Hill? He'd been at George Osborne's house.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're obviously mates for him to go round for an evening. So, yeah, but I mean, you just don't know. I mean, if there's an investigation, are we going to dig up other Tories who have been giving potentially insider trading or whatever it is?
I mean, I'm just saying, again, the thing that always blows my mind is all these rich people who are so money grubbing. I mean, how much money do you need? It's genuine. It's a big, weird thing. David and Gloucester, thank you very much. Our next guest actually is a former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville. We'll be talking about lawless Britain and all these thousands of criminals apparently roaming around. It's supposed to be tagged and they're not tagged, and no one seems to care or notice. But just Mike prepares. I want to ask you, do you think we're going to see charges against anybody on this? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:34 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer and this is Talk, the home of common sense. Let's go straight to my next guest now, Mike Neville. He's a former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector. Good afternoon to you, Mike.
Yes, hello, Julia.
Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. There's a couple of other stories I want to talk to you about, on top of what we actually invited you about, talk about criminals not being taxed. But in terms of this talk about possible criminal investigation into Lord Mandelson, we've had lots of talk in the past about possible investigations into Prince Andrew. Of course, the civil case was settled. Virginia Giuffre is now dead. Another woman has spoken up, makes claims that she has been trafficked for sex with Prince Andrew, as he then was. In terms of Mandelson, do you think there is a likelihood that there will be a proper police investigation, and that based on the Epstein file tranche of documents, if they are genuine documents, that charges will end up being brought?
Well, I think the fact that he's disclosed secret government memos would mean he's signed the Official Secrets Act, so there's no reason whatsoever why there shouldn't be a police investigation, and he could be charged with matters like that. People have been talking about things like treason. That doesn't apply here, but the
why not? He was a member
Act.
of Her Majesty's government at the time, and he basically breached state secrets. That's treason, isn't it?
Well, the treason usually involves plotting or trying to kill the king or something like that. So, unfortunately, we won't see his head chopped off at Tower Hill. It's a sad thing for all of us, I know, but he could go to jail for the Official Secrets Act offences. So that may be the line that the police take.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You know, these are very serious allegations. And as our previous guest, John Sweeney, pointed out, you know, a junior official, you know, in the Business Department or the Treasury passing on this information would be absolutely facing court. Can I put to you the question I put to my audience? Do you trust there will be a proper investigation, or do you think there would be an establishment cover-up?
Well, the problem is people, you know, you and I and the audience are cynical, aren't we? We saw the nonsense about that during the COVID inquiry, the fact that Boris Johnson was found guilty of eating a cake, but then Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner were found not guilty of eating a curry. You know, the difference seemed to be that it was whoever was in charge of the police in that area, and there were both police areas controlled by Labour, London and Durham. So. Yeah, I share your cynicism about this, and the tragedy is, as you said, if any junior official had leaked secret documents from the Prime Minister, they would be probably in jail right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And indeed, you know, insider trading, people who didn't even work for the government but working for banks, leaking that information for benefit of somebody else or themselves. I mean, these are really serious charges. Well, we shall see what happens. I wonder, innocent until proven guilty, no charges yet, but if anyone involved in this did end up facing charges and then went to prison and then left prison, whether they would actually wear a tag, because it turns out about 1 in 3 offenders who are under a court order to wear an ankle tag don't bother wearing them, and no one in the authorities seems to know or care who these people are and what they're up to. What's going on?
Well, it is a scandal, Julie. You know, the government, if we go back to the government, they say, oh, we're releasing people from prisons, often violent or prolific offenders, and don't worry, we're putting them on a tag so they'll be under house arrest. So what they're doing, they're gaslighting and conning the public. So you have these statistics here that, a third of the people who are supposed to be wearing them are not wearing them for whatever reason. I also did some inquiries myself last year, and I found that only 23% of breaches, you know, when the tag goes off and says this person has been in the wrong area, or they're out at night, or they're drinking alcohol when they're supposed to be, only 23% of those get actioned. And that action could be somebody coming around and saying, look, don't do that again. So what you have here is you've got people who are completely not wearing them. You've got no action taken when they actually breach them. And what the government do, it's like anything. It's like facial recognition or CCTV or any technology. They bring it in without the enforcement ability. They just load it on the police. So when they brought in these tags, it would have been far better to to spend some of the money on like a team of people who went and enforced it when somebody did something wrong.
Yeah.
But they don't do that. They just think, oh, we've got this technology and that'll sort it out.
But the whole point of technology is so you can identify they do something wrong and they do something about it. And of course, it's like people not turning up when they get a community centres. We were told, weren't we, instead of prison, they get community centres. People don't turn up, nothing happens. But they don't turn up because they know nothing's going to happen. Word goes round. These people aren't stupid. Most people who are done for crimes are being done repeatedly for crimes. That's their life, in which case they will know, yeah, nothing happened to my mate and he didn't wear his tag. I mean, I thought you couldn't get the sodding things off. But, I mean, the stats the Telegraph's uncovered, looking at just London, basically, London's got 5,323 people who should be wearing a tag. Only 1,473 of them, that's 28%, 1,473 of them are not wearing the device. But of those who actually have got their tag conditions, about 150 offenders are breaching their tag conditions each week in London. So you've got loads of people who actually are tagged and then they know that they're breaching the conditions. As you say, a lot of them, nothing's actually happening anyway. But I'm going to go out on a limb. I think the people who are not wearing their tags may be up to no good as well.
Well, this is the problem, and as I say, that the technology is often used and they're not followed through. So the criminals know, don't they? They can get captured on CCTV committing hundreds of shopliftings and nothing's done about it. They may get caught on facial recognition systems and no one arrests them. And now they can wear tags and nothing's done to them. And as you say, the word soon gets round amongst criminals that they can just carry on like this. But the biggest deception, in my view, Julia, is that the government are trying to tell the public that we're releasing these wicked criminals from prison and this is equivalent to being locked in a cell. It isn't. When they're locked in a cell, they can't steal your handbag, they can't attack me, they can't rape one of our children, and they cannot do evil crimes. So prison is the best place for criminals.
Absolutely. I mean, again, often people come out, fair enough, they're going to be tagged, but again, they need to be monitored. We need to know they're safe. And again, it's one thing someone who's stolen a handbag, but it's quite another if it's someone who's committed a serious, much more serious, that is a serious crime, but a more serious crime involving, sexual assault, domestic abuse, children. I mean, and we have no way of knowing whether people are safe. On the note of I must ask you, my bag was stolen 1st of June 2024. I was able to help the police identify who it was, or the suspect, should we say. Appeared in court, I think once, hasn't appeared since. There's a warrant out for his arrest, I think since last July or August now. Apparently, I contact them every month. Apparently, they're unable to find this man. They have his name, his photograph, they have his last known address. One time they went to his property before they managed to find him. It turns out he wasn't there. That's because it turns out he was in prison already for something else. You've got to see the funny side. What realistically can police do to find someone who they have a name, photograph of and last known address, and where it would mean that 6 months on they still can't find them?
Oh, they can continue. They're circulated on the police national computer as wanted, so if they're stopped in the street by a police officer, they'll be identified as being the name for an offence and should be arrested straight away. You can check, often these characters are on benefits, so you can go and we've swooped on the benefits office before now. Strangely enough, a lot of them are on benefits. You can check social media accounts. There's all manner of things if you really want to find somebody, that you will get them. And I made my life out of finding criminals, particularly those caught on images. And I took professional pride on catching tens of thousands of people. But the trouble is the police have been distracted by the 2 decades into looking at other things rather than catching criminals. So therein lies the problem, Julia.
Yep, yeah, I think I may have made a lot of those points in my latest emails. There we are. I must ask you also about latest information today. The UK's Information Commissioner's Office are going to investigate reports that Elon Musk's generative AI chatbot, this is Grok, has been used to generate sexual imagery of people, including children. There was obviously quite a fuss about a lot of images being turned from, I mean, it's happened to me. I don't know why someone wanted to do this, but picture of me in a dress on a holiday, and they put me in a bikini. Now, actually, it wasn't my body or my face, which was very disconcerting, but purporting to be me. We know they've been doing this to children, and we spoke to, I guess, Samantha Smith. This had happened to her, but they'd also taken pictures of her as a child and put them into sexualised clothing. Particularly disturbing when it's children. But I mean, Elon Musk basically said he wasn't going to do this. He wasn't going to allow Grok to do this. But this is a really big issue, isn't it? The use of AI and well, basically, basically sexually, sexual crimes against adults and children using AI?
Well, having dealt with the Information Commissioner's Office, I found them one of the most sensible government departments, so I trust they'll do the right thing. And the trouble is, of course, is that artificial intelligence is just the Wild West,
Yeah.
People introduce it for one thing and it does another. You only have to revisit the Terminator film to see where it can all go badly wrong. And we are in that moment now where, AI is going badly wrong, and it will be used by criminals and wicked individuals to do their ends. And unfortunately, it's really out of control, and I don't think the genie will go back in the box.
No, that's my fear as well. Really appreciate you joining us. Mike Neville, former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief and Constable, thank you for that. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, just asking about this Elon Musk, his AI engine. I've been using Grok a lot more lately, although I put something in. I asked it a question about somebody yesterday, and he gave me some information telling me that they'd been in prison for fraud for 3 years. And when I queried that, would just say, have they? Could you tell me more about that? It turns out, no, that was just someone else. And I thought, OK, that's a little bit worrying. If Grok has told me that someone has a criminal conviction when they absolutely have not. So it's not as reliable as a lot of people seem to claim it is, and certainly on matters of opinion or your moral choices or your philosophical choices, I would say absolutely useless. But where it's being used to generate these AI images, and a lot of people say, oh, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? I always think, tell you what, give them a picture of your 3-year-old daughter and see how you feel about it then. And that's the reality, isn't it? A lot of people don't realise how dangerous this is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are bamboozled that these sort of limits or tram lines to deal with AI aren't already in place on the basis of the developers themselves and the companies. And the fact that you're able to do this would strike many people as inappropriate. Given there are all kinds of content one could get it to generate which would be uncontroversially illegal, why is this not necessarily covered? The problem is all that gets mixed up, doesn't it, with the broader vendetta against Grok and X and Elon Musk by proxy. And so
I think you can think Elon Musk and X and everything is brilliant and still think we're going to be talking about rockets to the moon in a moment, which links, and still think that actually, again, there's that whole thing. Elon Musk is constantly putting out posts on X where it's got, these sort of these sort of Japanese cartoon styles of these sort of very cartoonish, doll-like women. And I've got to be honest, always in stocking suspenders. And we all know what his taste is. But I mean, genuinely, it's creepy. It's very much teenage boy nerd sitting in his bedroom, but it's creepy.
It's what happened. We've handed loads of economic and political power to a generation of nerds who are going to want to generate their own AI girlfriends. So that's one of the problems. But and of course they shouldn't be able to dictate the laws or the policies of any particular country. I think the problem is that all of the rightful stuff people are either outraged or creeped out about where it comes to any of these platforms can be mixed in with sheer political vendettas, which can muddle the mixture and mean for a very unclear discussion about what it is that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Coming up next, why we may not get a rocket heading to the moon on Sunday. We're going to be talking to space expert Andy Lound about what has gone wrong at NASA. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. 12:49 is the time where we talked an awful lot about problems at home on Earth when it comes to our royals, our politicians and others. Now let's talk about, well, problems in getting back into space, in particular to return to the moon, which is what NASA was planning to do with a rocket that was due to set off, Artemis 2, on Sunday. Well, now it looks like that may be delayed all the way until March. But why? Well, let's talk to space expert, I like to say space boffin, Andy Lound. A very good afternoon to you, Andy.
Good afternoon, Julia. I'm a real boffin.
I consider that a compliment, by the way. But, you know,
oh, yes.
Andy, I say that, and he's wearing a jacket, if those who are watching, wearing a jacket covered in pictures, images of the solar system and the galaxies, and looking absolutely like the space expert he is. OK, first of all, let's tell us, what was Artemis 2? What was the plan? Who was going to be on the rocket, and what was it all about?
Yes, got 4 astronauts who were going to take America back to the moon, as they say. This was going to be a free return trip around the moon. That means it just wasn't going to the lunar orbit, wasn't going to go round and round and round the moon. It was going to fly towards the moon, loop around, and then come back to the Earth, mainly as a test mission for the main spacecraft itself, the Orion, and to test the SLS, the full launch system, to see that it was feasible and operates correctly with humans on board to go around the moon on a 10-day mission.
Yeah,
that was the plan. The rollout, which means they take the big rocket and move it at Cape Kennedy to the launch facility, goes through what every rocket has ever done, and that goes through what's called a wet test. You fuel it up with all the fuel, the liquid oxygen, the liquid hydrogen. So you've got something like 2 million litres of hydrogen and 742,000 litres of oxygen. And this very cold, minus 253 degrees for the hydrogen, minus 183 degrees for the oxygen, is pumped into the fuel tanks. And the idea is then to pressurize it. Has to be about 3,000 psi, very high pressure, to make sure that everything is working, the electronics work, everything interfaces. But a problem emerged when it connects to it at the bottom. I've got a model here, which might be easy to show you. So this is the main vehicle.
Sorry if you're listening to this, but we've got it on. Watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, at the bottom of the rocket here, where you see the 4 thrusters are, the fuel comes in through the bottom here, and they pump it up into the tanks, into the vehicle. The problem is it started to leak from the bottom there again. And this is because probably the seals, the gaskets, are having a real problem. When this is actually fully cold, the actual whole thing shrinks by 6 inches. So you've got to take that into account when you're doing all this work. And of course, that can have a major effect on the seals. And if the seals are leaking, then it's going to be a problem. However, hydrogen is very, very hard to keep out. H2, so it's a molecule of hydrogen, 2 hydrogen atoms together, is the smallest molecule in the universe, and you can get through the tiniest imaginable gap. So you have these fantastic seals, and unfortunately it's still leaking, but to a level which is not deemed to be safe for the vehicle. And therefore they've had to stop the test. They're going to bring the vehicle back and have a look at the seals again before they can even make an attempt.
Well, they weren't. I mean, the 4 man and woman crew, they weren't actually there for the test. They're in isolation, as always happens with crews, so you don't get a last minute bout of flu or diarrhea or something. But interestingly, because apparently when they went to close the hatch where the astronauts going to be, they had a bit of a trouble closing that safety lock as well. I mean, I've got to be honest with you, if I were the astronauts, I'd be going, I'm not sure about this right now.
No, the astronauts work very closely with all the engineers and technicians involved, so they're not exactly totally isolated during the whole development process. It was something they learned from the Apollo program after the disastrous Apollo 1 fire, that astronauts would actually be working very closely to the manufacturers. Boeing is the major manufacturer of this vehicle, so they're actually all working very close together at elements, so they can see at the snags. You always get these kind of snags, hatch door snagging. You're trying to think, well, what's happened here? Has the temperature dropped a little bit, and perhaps the seal that goes around it has either contracted or expanded a little bit, so they had to
So you have these tests to spot the problems,
Yes,
but why can it not go ahead? I mean, they're going to have to look at it. They think it'll take a while, but presumably there are only certain times of certain days, certain periods in our route around the sun that they can actually launch. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, you've got to get the Earth and the Moon in the right position for them in order to get to the right position, and that happens only for a few days each month.
Right.
Because of course it takes, as we know, we are months, and that's the time it takes the Moon to go around the Earth. And therefore, we've only got this narrow field. So if we miss it, and we are going to miss it now, 11th of April, 11th of February was the last possibility date. They've missed that. So now we would go 4 weeks ahead for March to actually do it all over again. But that gives them 4 weeks to actually do the work on here to check that everything is working.
Right.
And we did have similar issues, for instance, on Saturn V when it was being developed. And this is sort of the equivalent of the old Apollo 8 mission of 1968. And if anything, the Apollo 8 mission was more risky because the Saturn V had never been launched complete successfully before they put a crew on board.
Yeah. But the thing about this is what's so extraordinary is that it's been so long since anyone has actually been to the moon, or indeed been out of Earth's orbit. And I love. I mean, people are always obsessed with these things. But the full crew involved, the first woman ever to leave the orbit of Earth, the first non-white, and the first non-American. And of course, a white American man. But it is but it is extraordinary. All those firsts. When you think because for such a long time there were no missions to the moon. Of course, we also saw NASA. When we did, when all those astronauts were lost. Basically, Congress was going, we ain't spending any more money on this. This is a disaster. And that pulled things back a lot. Like, why are we spending all this money? What's the point of it? So, what is the point of going to the moon in the first place, and why is it happening now?
A couple of things. Now is the easy one to answer. The technology is better than it was in the 1960s and 70s, and Richard Nixon, who cancelled the programme, was probably right to do so because he didn't seem to have a real plan, if you like, a roadmap to what we're going to do. It was just simply going and coming back without any practicality. So we've got better technology now, which is the way we're trying to move forward. To go there is really important. One thing, there's the natural exploration and study to try and understand the nature of the universe, the nature of the Earth, and matters like that. And in order to do that properly, we really need scientists to be on the moon. Actually trained. Only one trained scientist went to the moon, and that was a geologist in the last ever flight. So we needed to put real expertise down onto the surface of the moon to do the proper research that is necessary to understand the science. The other thing is, of course, the world has changed now. We've now got commercialisation come into place, and they suddenly realised we can actually get rare earth metals and minerals from the moon itself, other materials such as possibly helium-3, an isotope of helium, which only exists on the surface of the moon, which is accessible to us, which were nuclear fusion power stations.
So there's a lot of options. But also, isn't there, the idea that actually, without having the atmosphere of the Earth, they could actually use the moon as the base for any other sort of inter-solar system travel, because it's absolutely fascinating. Well, there's fingers crossed it does actually end up taking off. Andy Lown, space expert, thank you very much indeed for that. Listening to all of that, Tom Slater, I mean, I always love these stories. Would you go into space if you had the option?
Oh, absolutely.
Would you do a Katy Perry and kiss the ground afterwards?
Not sure about that, but I'd be absolutely terrified. But who could pass up?
Would you shag Trudeau in return for
whatever it takes? Get me up there.
But, I mean, to me, I mean, like these billionaires, you say, like, I will pay, what was it, 250 million to, I would, if I had that sort of money, or, I could maybe get Epstein or someone to give it to me, I would totally do that.
100%.
It'd be so amazing.
There's a reason it's for all people for millennia, isn't it?
One person who would absolutely like Ian Collins to go into space is Mrs. Collins. She's got a petition going. Hello, you.
Do you know what? Not in a million years.
Really? I'm fascinated that people would do this.
Not in a million years.
Is that because of the risk?
Yeah, because
I wouldn't go and live on Mars or
it's
something.
It's kind of one direction, isn't it? Really, I mean, if it goes wrong.
I think the plan is that you come
I know
back.
that's the same if you're flying an aeroplane, but I can't imagine it's very comfortable. I quite like that floating around thing a bit. I think that's all right. Ablutions are a bit of a problem.
But getting to go, like say, the ISIS space, I'm not sure I feel the need to go to the moon.
You see the moon, because I love a clanger, you see. I love a clanger.
I love a clanger.
And if I could spot one of those little beasts,
in the head now.
and that stupid dragon,
it's not copyright.
Whatever that was, yeah. Let's do your favourite TV shows. No, I would just find it too scary. When I speak to people who flew on Concorde, and a couple of journos, and you probably know a few, Julia, that took that last flight, etc. Everybody says Concorde was not a comfortable journey.
No,
it was just a very fast one.
Yeah, it wasn't like 3-4 hours or something.
Yeah, it's odd,